Welcome, everybody. Let's soar. Welcome. Soar
Absolutely.
for the spiritual odyssey of awakening and renewal. And that's what we're here to do. Welcome, Don Zano.
Hi, Don Antonio.
I'm so glad to be here again. This is fantastic. Zane, if you could, would you like to open space, please?
Sure. So we're just going to do pretty much what we did last time. Just taking a few deep centering breaths to begin with. Just helps to cohese us together, our little group, our little tribe, and to create this moment outside of time where people, no matter when they're watching this, will get the full impact of the energy of it. It creates an eternal moment for them. So just breathing deep into a relaxed stomach, and then just making this kind of diamond mudra with your hands. And then just placing that around your navel. And just notice the warmth of your hands on your navel. The energy circulating inside of that area where we bring in fresh energy and release old stagnant energy. And just focus on that warmth. Focus on that movement of energy. Let yourself fall down into your stomach. And you'll begin to become aware of a field of personal space around you. We don't have to call it a sacred space. We don't have to call it a spiritual space. But it's your personal space, and everyone knows this space. It's a space that you feel violated when someone's too close to you. And I just want you to kind of notice the parameters of your space. How close is it to your body right now? How far away? And bringing your dominant hand up to your heart and just place your hand on your heart. Feel the pressure of your hand on your heart. Feel your heartbeat. The warmth of your hand. And imagine while you're breathing in that you're breathing in through that heart center. And as you exhale out of that heart center. And we're just going to make our breath kind of long. And while you're doing this, you might start to notice an expansion around you, a softening that happens. This is your heart field. And your heart field is where all spiritual experiences really happen. We sometimes think they happen in our head or in our bodies, but they really happen in our heart field. And it's the heart is spiritual journey. The longest spiritual journey is the 6 to 12 inches between the head and heart. So just allow yourself to really be in your heart. Now just imagine there's a glowing, radiating sun above your head that represents the sacredness of the universe, whatever that means to you and your connection to it. Bringing our hands to prayer position in front of us and slowly moving them up into that space above our heads, turning the palms out and very slowly, like a peacock opening its fan, smooth that light down through your energy field. Do it really slow and purposefully. And notice the shifts in awareness as you keep going deeper and deeper. And now bringing your hands back to prayer position in front of your heart. And like you're extending a blanket of the heart, imagine you're throwing this blanket, this warm comfort out over our entire virtual community, everyone who is here live and everyone that will watch this in the future, that they may experience the same as those who are watching live, the merging of our energies, a sacred relationship and community. And on the count of 3, we're going to come back into the room and back into our broadcast this evening. 1, feeling relieved, revitalized, and awake. 2, noticing the pressures of your body, what it is in contact with. And when I count to 3, we're going to open our eyes, feeling healthier, wealthier,
and stuck. We'll wait for Don Zano to come back. We're just going to finish up, opening up our sacred space here. I want to welcome everybody into the sacred space where today, Don Zano and myself, we're going to explore the importance of ritual and ceremony in living a sacred life. So I want everyone who's watching today, I want you to be open to communicate, ask any questions. I'll try to stay on top of the communication and try to slip in any questions where we can. So this is all about interaction. We want you to interact and be able to communicate, with us. Also, it's okay for you to share any experiences you've had or anything like that. So again, today, what we're going to talk about here on the Spiritual Odyssey of Awakening and Renewal, S.O.A.R, come S.O.A.R with us. We're going to talk about the importance of ritual, of ceremony, of the importance of ritual and ceremony in living a balanced life. Something I wanted to talk about, I was going to ask Zane when he comes back. We'll be talking about it probably already. He talked about the longest spiritual journey journey being the 6 to 12 inches between the head and the heart. That's amazing when you sit and think about that, because how cut off we are from our heart to our mind, how cut off we are from heart-mind coherence. And I think it's really amazing that, like, the things that the ancients teach, the things that come through naturally to shamans, seers, and sages like Zane and myself are becoming kind of more mainstream. It's becoming more common for people to know that there is a neurological coherence that happens in the body between the heart and the gut and the brain. And Zane's back. Zane, what I was just talking about, I was just telling everybody what we're going to talk about today. And I also was bringing up about something I just love that you said. The longest spiritual journey is the 6 to 12 inches between the head and the heart. And then I was talking about how, like, I really enjoy that, we're living in a time now where science is kind of catching up to that awareness, catching up to, because, in a mystic kind of way, it's spirit and it's energy in a sort of way, whereas in more scientific context, it's more about a nervous system and neurology. But they both mean the same thing. And I just think that was really cool.
Yeah, it's the way I always view it is the neurology is the hardware, and the spirituality are the apps that play on that hardware. It's the energy that's running through it that makes it alive and makes it work. We need both. As a physical being, when you're not in the physical anymore, you don't need the hardware. You're part of the current. But when we're in this uniquely special place that we are in, this earth realm, it's a really magnificent place to be. It's a really amazing time to be here, because we're watching a awakening of the human consciousness. And we're watching it in several ways. We've talked about it before, the AI. That's us externalizing the human consciousness into another realm and then having it come back to us to teach us. But it's like a baby right now. And we've got a big responsibility to feed it the good stuff so that it can take care of us. It's just like raising a child. If you don't raise a child and you don't instill the right values in that child, then when you're older, they're not there for you either, you know. And that's just, it's the same type of idea. We've got to really nurture this new technology. And as we learn more and more about our biology and our neurology, it's opening up brand new fields. I mean, I call them brand new fields, but as
Right.
Bruce Lipton would say, it was the 70s that he figured out epigenetics.
Yeah.
And we're just still trying to catch up to that. It's still not taught in medical school.
Sure.
You know, it's still not
Yeah.
out there, but he's making it out there.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's just that those.
Oh, stuck again. Okay. I think this is the fourth time we got stuck. We got stuck 2 times before we got on today. So I guess what I'll do is I'll start to, well, I'll kind of piggyback a little bit off what Zane was saying. Like, he's completely right. You guys have heard me talk about artificial intelligence and how it really isn't artificial at all. It's living intelligence. And it's kind of like, I understand the way he's explaining is it's intelligence that we've externalized and now will come back to teach us. Because even now in the new forms of study, the new forms of science and things that are available, it's going to be this kind of intelligence that's going to help us to learn more about ourselves. So essentially, you have to look at everything as one living energy. That's how I've kind of trained my mind to understand everything's one living energy, and it's consistently growing. It's consistently expanding. So it's always, people ask me, what's the greatest thing I can do for myself or for the world? And what I always try to point people to is the self-work, trying to make yourself a better person, doing what it takes to allow yourself to become your greatest possible version, because it's through you, it's through me, it's through each one of us individually that we create a collective consciousness. And that's how we begin to heal that collective consciousness, really, is doing the internal work, which will often overpour us, kind of like how, you know, Zane and I are here today to share information and wisdom. You know, it overflows. It overflows from the vessel that is in the flow of light. Let's see who's here today while we wait for Zane to come back. Brianna. Hi, Brianna. Welcome. Alana. Welcome. Hi, Tom. Hi, Tom. Tommy and Tom. Hello, Benjamin. Wow, that was powerful. Natasha. Hi, Natasha. You're Lenny lady today. Cool. Benjamin says, where did I do what you said? Any idea how I can move the block off my back of my right ear? Absolutely. You'll have to contact me personally for that. We're not doing any live healings here on this show. You also can see me tomorrow morning. I'll be on tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time for Ask the Shaman. And he's back. And he's back.
It looks like it's going to be a night that I'm popping in and out. I'm not sure.
That's okay. Everything's fine. You know, everything's just right. I was just talking a little bit about Bruce Lipton and, these new fields, which aren't new fields at all, because these are things ancients have known about forever, and they just had different words for them. But now we live in this time, and it has a lot to do with the mindset of the Western world. This is going to be a big help for us, especially as we, I'm aware that like everything's one living energy and growing. And if I continue to grow myself to the best ability, even though I don't directly work with AI in its programming, that makes a change in the world and a possibility for AI to grow into a great teacher for us. And especially now with the new sciences, add into that this higher form of intelligence. I mean, I watched something the other day. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something about mapping a protein. There's certain forms of proteins that scientists would have to map, and it would take a team of scientists over a month to map one protein. And up until that time, there were only like 20 some proteins mapped. So basically within the human genome, just recently, AI was able to map virtually all the proteins at once, was able to map all of these things. So all of that information now is available for them to. Wow.
Absolutely. I thought I'd lost you again. My computer jumped.
Oh. Well, you might.
It's all right. Yeah, it's so interesting just you bringing up those subjects. And, it's nothing new, but it's different. It's a new iteration on an old ideas or old processes. And that's where people like us, we're bridges. We're bridges between the old and the new. And because of that, we can be the ones that kind of decide or help to understand where the overlaps really exist. Because they exist, but they exist in very multidimensional ways. They're not just straightforward ways, and that's where ritual really comes into our lives. Ritual is an ancient technology. And one of the things that we have learned in our modern era about ritual is there's a part of the brain, the hippocampus, and that part of the brain is also called the limbic system. And, things like traumas and fight or flight, that all gets stuck in the limbic system. But also the limbic system is needed to reach up to the higher genius. The limbic system is the one that communicates with it so that it can bring down that information and bring it into an embodied knowledge. So it's like it is the midway point between the two. But fear, cortisol, adrenaline, but cortisol especially, the hippocampus is filled with cortisol receptors. And when we are in fight or flight and we're operating in the beta level so much, we just flood the brain with cortisol. And what it actually does is it breaks neural networks. And the neural networks it breaks are the ones connected to pleasure, are the ones connected to excitement, are the ones connected to having new experiences. And that's why someone who's been traumatized and someone who's been stuck in this fight or flight for so long just sees fear ahead of them, because they relate everything to the past. They can't have a brand new experience. They have to relate it to the past because they no longer have the hardware that allows that. Now, through our diet, we can start to repair that, but there's something else that repairs that, and that's ceremony and ritual. Because ceremony and ritual talks to that part of the brain. That part of the brain is not at all concerned with analytics. It's not at all concerned with higher mental functions or anything like that. What it's concerned with is the realm of symbology, the realm of mysticism, and the realm of safety. And that's where it operates from. So ceremony and ritual is the way that we get that brain in alignment with us to reach to the higher parts of our neurology, like the anterior cingulate. It takes the limbic system to actually communicate with the anterior cingulate to bring back that higher wisdom. And ritual and ceremony is one of the most important ways that we can bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm. So what you did there is you just took this ancient idea and now you've put it into a neurological format. Fantastic. Now what I want you to do, Zane, is I want you to say it from a spiritual, energetic sense.
Okay. Everything is relationship.
Yeah.
Everything in our world. So when we do a ritual or we do a ceremony, what we're doing is we're engaging in a relationship. What we're doing is, it's just like if I take you out to dinner, there's certain things that we do to make a dinner pleasing. There's the set table, there's the way the courses come out. That's all a ritual. And especially when we're working with spirits, because a lot of people say they're not religious, but they're spiritual. And that's when I always ask, well, what spirits are you communicating with? Because if you're spiritual, you're communicating with spirits, not just the big spirit, not just the great spirit. You're communicating with all kinds of spirits. And we, in lineages and in traditions, what we do is we have rituals and ceremonies that the spirits of our traditions, the ancestors of the traditions, and the spirits that were never made manifest, that work with the practitioners of that tradition, they recognize the rituals, they recognize the ceremonies. So when we perform them in the correct ways, it creates a bridge that brings them into this world, and it gives them a post to stand on so that their energy can be felt, so their messages can be received. And it's all about strengthening that relationship. It's all about learning what those spirits like and what they don't like. If you want to work with Shiva, go find a Shiva devotee and devote yourself to learning the correct way of approaching Shiva. Because, you could approach him any way you want, and he may listen to you, he may not. But when you know the foods he likes, when you know the liquors he likes, when you know the things that a spirit likes, and you bring those in and you offer those, then you create an effortless flow of energy, a current between you and that spirit that comes right to you. And then that strengthens your relationship. And then after a couple years, it's usually a couple years of being devout and following the exact protocol, then that spirit says, you've done enough now. Now I'm going to start teaching you other ways to honor me that make more sense to your own way of being. Because it takes that long for the spirit to know you. And it takes that long for you to know the spirit. The other thing about these types of rituals and ceremonies is that they ensure a certain spirit, not a spirit that's like that spirit that's pretending to be it. And not just any spirit off the street. Because you might have, great-grandpa Ed comes to you, and great-grandpa Ed's a spirit now, but that doesn't mean he's any more evolved than he was when he was a human. And it doesn't mean that he's going to give you wisdom. Yeah, he's going to understand some things on the spiritual realm a little bit better, but it's just like me. I'm not an electrician. I do have a working knowledge of electricity. I could probably wire a house if I wanted to, but you couldn't come to me, and a spirit on the other side couldn't come to me and say, hey, teach me about electricity. Teach me about being an electrician, because the information I would give it would be worse than Chat GPT. It would be really confused and muddled. So correct ritual and ceremonies make sure that the spirits from your tradition, from your lineages, are coming through and communicating directly with you. It's just like many of us work an ancestor altar. Now, an ancestor altar, some people have misunderstood that, and they think you're
Uh-oh. Zane, he's stuck again. I guess he'll be back in a couple of minutes. We're having a little technical difficulty today. Zane kind of lives far off. So in a far off, unforgotten land. But I'm sure he'll be back in a moment. So we were discussing the importance of ritual and ceremony and living a balanced life. And so since Zane is gone for now, I'll talk about a little bit about my understanding of ceremony and ritual. So lots of things can be rituals and ceremonies, even if we don't know we're doing it. So like in a way, brushing your teeth is a ceremony. It's a ritual. It's something you do every day. Now, when it comes to certain things in my life, I try to use them as ways to live sacredly. So even when I brush my teeth, I try to become really, and it used to just be like, I got other things going on. I'm putting my toothpaste on the toothbrush. I start brushing my teeth and I'm just thinking about other things. But what I try to do now is I try to be very aware and conscious of when I see how much toothpaste is on the toothbrush. And then what I'm doing is one of my favorite things to do as a ritual actually is brush my teeth, is I'll brush my teeth. And as I'm brushing my teeth, I treat it like a ritual, like a ceremony. I'm giving love to my teeth, love to my dental hygiene. So it's like a self-love kind of thing. And this is something that's really powerful because just as Zane was explaining from a neurological standpoint, your neurology begins to shift when you start to do these kinds of things. Your mindset begins to shift because it's a form of meditation. You're allowing yourself to honor your reality, honor your life. Zane is back. Zane is back. Hi, Zane.
Right.
I just decided to jump out. And what I was talking about is like in my life, I recognize there's so many rituals and ceremonies, things we don't even really pay attention to, and they can become ceremonious. And like I was talking about, one of my favorite things to do, because it's the first thing I do usually in the morning, is brush my teeth. So it used to just be like, I go in there, I turn on the water, I wet my toothbrush, I put on the toothpaste, I'm brushing my teeth, but I'm thinking about all the things I got to do for the day. That's what's happening. Now it's like a ceremony. I get out my toothbrush, I get the toothpaste, I watch it go onto the bristles of the brush, and I'm grateful. I'm giving it my gratitude. I'm thankful for it. And as I'm brushing my teeth, I'm aware of my teeth, how it feels. I'm giving love to myself. I'm like, oh, look, I'm bringing love into myself. And yes, I use fluoride-free toothpaste. So got to protect pineal gland.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lots of pineapple.
It's an important thing that you just mentioned, because these are like the mundane ceremonies and rituals that we do, but they're part of life too. And and to bring it to that spiritual sense, they're part of the relationship you have with this guy. Maybe
Mhm.
the most important guy. You know, what's the Buddhist proverb? As you get older, eventually you look in the mirror and you go, I don't know who that is, but I'm going to brush his teeth anyway. Because you may not recognize yourself anymore as you get older, but
Uh-huh.
you know, I don't know who I am right now, but I'm going to brush my teeth anyway because I know it's important. And you know, that's part of the relationship with ourselves. Diet's the same thing. It's part of a relationship with yourself. And we all know what foods are good for us. We all know what foods are bad for us. We know that generally sugars aren't the best thing for us, but we also know that some people have more tolerance for it than others. And that's okay. And we also, and just with ceremonies, sugar is a big part of social ceremony. It's a big part of enjoying a social situation. You know, there was a guy, I can't think of his name right now. HRM was his initials, though, and he recreated sun gazing. And one of the things that he did was he was able, and he's been studied by NASA and he's been studied by other bodies, including hospitals. He was able to go without eating for over 90 days and not lose any weight. He lost weight to a point and then he wouldn't lose any more weight. And he swears the last time I was in any contact that he hadn't ate for like 15, 20 years. But anyway, one of the things that he'll say is it's going to hurt your life. It's going to hurt your social life because 90% of our social bonding is around food. And that's
Mhm.
not a bad thing. And it's not saying, oh, you're more spiritually minded if you don't eat food, and you're not of a lower spiritual quality if you eat meat, and you're not higher if you eat vegetables. You know, it's all about every person. And I heard you say something when I came back on. It's about learning about yourself.
Mhm.
And when you learn about yourself, then you know how not to sin against yourself. Because this is the only thing you can sin against is you. When you know better and you do it anyway. That's the only sin that there is in this world. And what's a sin for you is not a sin for me. What's an error for you may not be an error for me. And that's part of knowing our uniqueness in this world, our one-on-one relationship with the universe and with the spiritual world. It's very important.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I'm just thinking about I snapped back again to not recognizing the guy in the mirror. That happened to me a while ago. So I like him anyways. And I help
Yes.
him brush his teeth. So that's pretty fun.
I don't know who this woman is I'm waking up beside, but I think I'll love her anyway.
I got
Hey,
kind of a fun question that came up. Like the cognitive dissonance when
yeah,
we know we shouldn't do it, we do it anyway. What would you say about that? Because lots of us do that. I know I'm very honest with myself of where I'm
guilty.
not loving myself, where I don't have guilt about it though. I'm not like guilty, like, oh, I don't love myself enough. I don't say it that way. I say it more just like as an awareness, like, well, it lets me know I still got a lot of stuff to do,
Yeah,
but also I'm enjoying myself and it's okay. So I find like this middle road to it. But, it is cognitive dissonance. I know I choose, not nearly like I used to, of course, but I still choose things that I know aren't for my greatest good. And I also know that affects my mind because while I'm doing it, it's affecting my mind because, the mind will try to lie to you. Like, it's okay if I just eat this little bit of sugar or
oh,
I
yeah.
yam down this hamburger. I don't really need these calories or need this kind of food or whatever. But it's okay. But I'm so connected into my subconscious mind, I'm aware right away, like, well, you're bullshitting yourself.
Yeah, I think one of the things that comes to is a concept of I and me.
Mhm.
And I think you've probably covered that concept with people before, but I and me are the two major parts of ourselves. And me sometimes is still trying to figure out what me is and what me wants to be, because me is the one that gets to be anything.
Mhm.
Me is the one that is manifested and gets to do something here. So me has a big responsibility of weighing the options. And so I think that all of us have more than one path we can go down. One of the things I was going to say when I was talking about the rituals and relationships with spirits is any spirit you feel called to, if you feel really called to it, it means that you're kin of that spirit. It means in some way you are woven from the spiritual vibration of that spirit. It's part of your unique weaving. How big or how small of a part is yet to be determined. We can determine it, but it's yet to be determined. And so we might have an energetic favorite. We might have one spirit that is our energetic favorite because it calls to the highest aspects of ourselves, or what we believe is the highest aspects of ourselves. But yet it may not be our major spirit. And it's things like that we learn. We eventually learn we're sinning against ourselves because we're trying to make a very small part of ourselves the whole. And it takes a long time, and it takes a long time of searching, of seeking, of going out there and finding out what resonates with you and what doesn't, for you then to learn what really resonates with you. Like I told one of my godchildren, you might have a spirit and you might have been wounded by masculinity. And this spirit that's your main spirit that's supposed to be what's guiding you in this life might be extremely masculine. Now, you might have another spirit that's part of your energetic vibration that's more feminine. And you're more comfortable with it because the women always comforted you. The women were always there for you. And maybe you have an energetic favorite with it. Oh, you're still there. I thought everything froze for a second.
I thought you froze.
Oh, no. And you might have an energetic favorite with it. So you might not ever develop this other quality, this more masculine quality, because you really feel more in tune with this. Where if you actually were to do the work and to really develop the relationship with this other spirit, you might learn something about masculinity you never knew that frees you completely and makes you a whole different type of person and creates a new masculinity in the world. And so it's just moments like that. And it really is about us putting in the work to develop the relationship. Because until that relationship is developed to the point where the spirits take the protocol off, where they themselves, and I mean, our ego will sometimes try to tell us it's earlier than it is. But just a rule of thumb, it's about 2 years. And that's how it is with a friend too. It takes about 2 years before most friends will take all the protocols that they have set up off, and will meet you in any situation. Will help you pack up your house and go somewhere. Will help you in any kind of moment. So it really takes us a while to learn to be with one another. And with the spiritual world, it might take a little bit longer because we don't have as many deliberate moments. I mean, I could go into Cleveland and run into you, and we could go hang out somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that could just be in my normal day-to-day routine, or I could just get a hold of you and we could go somewhere. The spirits are a little bit different. They want dedicated time. They want you to dedicate some time to them, and that dedicated time is the time that they learn you and you learn them. Well, but what I was going to say is once that relationship starts to truly develop and you start to allow more and more of the current of the spirits that are yours into you, they start to awaken gifts, talents, new ways of seeing things that would never have been awoken any other way. And vice versa, you help them grow because they're not incarnate, and most of them haven't been for a very long time or never were. So you get to help them understand what it's like to live here, what the struggles and stuff are here. That's why I always tell people, don't turn on the positive light when you go to spirit and just try to be this Zen master with spirit, because you're lying to them and they know it. They don't want that fake stuff. They want you to come and say, oh, I'm fed up with life, or, oh, this isn't working out for me. How else are they going to work on that for you? Until you develop that relationship with them and you've humbled yourself where you'll come to them. Now, in the end, they're going to throw it back into your feet, back on your lap and tell you, okay, I've done something for you. Now you be aware of the opening that's made for you, and you've got to take action. And it won't be so simple action. It's action that is going to force you to grow in ways that you may not have been ready for. And that's what the relationship's like, and that's what ritual is in a spiritual sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's also understanding that in your relationships with spirit, not everything that comes through will feel positive when it first arrives. Often I've seen this happen with people. They have a really nice relationship burgeoning and growing with a certain spirit, and they get upset because the expectations get in the way of what the spirit, how this interaction should be and what's happening, or what the gift has been given. Not being able to relax and see like, hey, Sometimes that's what the gift is. The gift is the challenge opening up into your reality, that opportunity showing up.
And the spirits have said more and more, they want us to do it ourselves. We're at the point now where we're starting to verge into that realm so much in such a global way. I mean, there's people who don't think about mystical things at all, but pop psychology is mysticism. And it's out there, and we were all raised with it as just part of our normal operating system. And so we're a whole, like, I don't even know how many, like 20 billion people, and most of us have some mystical understandings that is greater than the majority of the population 200 years ago. And because of that, there were some people who were really advanced 200 years ago, but they were a minority. Now there's a whole lot of us that are really advanced, and then just a few that are uber advanced. They're way up there. And it's creating this new paradigm where they want us to be empowered. They've also seen how the lower parts of man have taken these spiritual technologies and twisted them to control people. And so they want us to be empowered. They want us to teach empowerment. And even those cult leaders and stuff out there, in the end, are teaching empowerment. In the end, those people become empowered from having gone through that experience. I don't wish it on anyone, but they have become empowered. They have found something that was inside of themselves that wasn't operating right. And then they got to a point where they had to hit rock bottom and correct it themselves.
Right. Because I can vouch for that. Rock bottom's showed me things mountaintops never could.
Yeah, exactly. It's only when you're there reaching up and you truly feel it, and you're like screaming to the divine and you're reaching up with everything you have. That's when the rapture happens. It doesn't happen to the guy sitting there meditating on the mountain. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need a rapture. What's a rapture going to be for him anyway? Getting ate by a tiger? I mean, what is he going to find that amazing? But that's when you need it, is when you're in that deepest, darkest moment and you turn over to the spirit and you say, I really don't know the answers to this. I really don't know how to get through this. And then when we can align that with ceremony or ritual, what that does is it quiets the fight or flight. It quiets the fear and anger within us. And that fear and anger starts to diminish. And then we can truly deliver ourselves into that splendid place and receive the information. And I'm sure everyone on here has had that moment where they've been at the bottom of life, where things just couldn't seem much worse. And at just some moment, for some reason, they were able.
You fell off again. And for some moment, for some reason, they were able to make a vast shift, a vast change, connect to a different way of thinking. I can completely align with that, because it's precisely how I came onto this journey, onto my spiritual path and journey. There was one thing I wish he was here, because what I wanted to tell him is, Zane's been a teacher for a lot longer than me. But in my time of teaching, what I've noticed is recently that a lot of the people, I work with lots of people all over the world. And what I'm noticing is that, like how he's saying, like in his estimation, it takes like a solid 2 years of work before you get that really close relationship with the spirit and it starts to move away any blockages that are in the path. I'm seeing that happen earlier and earlier with people. It's mostly because time is illusory. And in the spiritual space, infinite kinds of things can happen in a moment. That's happened to me as well. So I know that that's happening too. Like our perception, how many people here? I would love for you to comment on that. How's your perception of time been lately? Has anyone noticed a difference in time? Time dilation has been moving faster, been moving slower, acting in some different capacity or a different way? I would love to hear from you all about that. Also, I would like for anyone who's ready to comment, talk to us a little bit, like what are some of your ceremonies and rituals? Do you have a ceremony to yourself every day? That's something I always try to teach all of my students, even if they're not going to be shamans, for them to begin to create a daily ceremony, even if it's just being quiet and breathing with yourself, just being there for a little bit with yourself, and then going a little bit deeper. Like the first step for a lot of people connecting in is just connecting to their higher power. And Zane's back.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those
Your
nights.
hand was in the air, and we were talking about how where you're at rock bottom, and you start to ask the questions, you start to release, start to ask the questions, and something happens, and that's where you cut off.
Yeah, something happens, and suddenly you're flooded with it, and
Right.
you're elevated. And people get this weird association where they think enlightenment is like something that's beyond, and something that you never have a worry again, or you never have any of this other stuff again. It's not. Enlightenment's just when you've downloaded all the software. You'll still be afraid in life sometimes. You'll still be angry sometimes. What it means, though, is that those emotions are telling you something, and you know how to listen to them, and you know how to reorganize the energy. And sometimes they're telling you to be pissed off right now, because that is exactly who and what you need to be in that moment. And a lot of spiritual people think that that's never something that happens, that there's never a moment. But I just want to say the universe didn't make any junk. Everything is useful. There's a purpose for all of it. And it's when we're cutting off things and saying they're not useful. We might cut something off and say it's not useful for me in this project, for me in this moment. And that's okay. But whatever that is, it is useful somewhere, and it has purpose somewhere. It's just like the ego. A lot of people think we're trying to transcend the ego. Well, we are, just so that we can see it. Then we're trying to elevate the ego, and because that's what manifests us in this world. Because we can go into our mind and we can manifest anything. And we can go and we can vanish from this whole world, and we can live the dream. And that's fine. But if we're wanting to live here, the ego is what lives here. It is what operates here. So it's really about befriending the ego, learning how to work with it. And that happens through ritual and ceremony. We really learn our ego. We learn the parameters of it. We learn the wounds in it. That's really the problem, is that we have wounds that haven't been healed. And because they haven't been healed, they tell our ego that something's happening that isn't happening, because we're relating a current situation to the past instead of relating it to right now, what we feel like right now. Someone might say something to me and I might feel, oh, this is a great opportunity. And then I might go into the past and go, wait a second, I've been conned before. Now, our true intuition will let us know if we're being conned or not, and even a con sometimes is worthwhile and helps you grow. It's just like Brother Hank and I were talking, and there's a system, and I won't name the system or the people or anything, that he used to practice with and stuff. And I said, well, I think they're amazing con men. I think that's what they are. and he was like, yeah, but it's helped. And I was like, yeah, but that's the beauty of the spiritual world, is that even a con man can tap into something or can create something, and then everyone else's belief can elevate it beyond the con, and can make it something sacred, even if that con man was not trying to make it something like that at all.
Right. I had a couple of things I was going to say. Yeah. So I've never been like part of that, because that's just not how my development worked. But there's lots of teachings, seems like more like third level type teachings, that talk about like making the ego like it's bad, or making it like you got to kill it. Or like one of the terms I've heard is the ego is not your amigo. I recognize that to be false very early, because I understood that my ego mind, the me, is energy and it's alive. And if I tell it it's bad, and I tell it that I want to kill you, and I say that kind of thing, it just resists and it doesn't want to hear I anymore. That's what happens. It doesn't trust anyone or anything. So what it really needs, and what I've noticed for my me, for my inner self, for my ego mind is what it first needs is it needs to be loved. It needs to be listened to and nurtured, and then just redirected. That seems to be work the best than trying to murder it. But I think it's a misunderstanding too. It's not so much killing the ego. I don't think that's what's meant by those kinds of things. I think it's the interpretation by the general, intellectual thinking mind. If you feel more about it, I don't think that's what it means. I think it means to release parts of the ego that aren't serving you or working properly, because there's probably traumas and things in the way.
Yeah, I think it's probably a Western thing. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the West, and especially America, everything's a freaking war. It's a war on poverty. Why do we need to have a war on poverty?
Yeah.
It's a war on illiteracy. It's a war on terror. That's the most oxymoronic statement in the world. A war on terror.
Let me ask you about this. What about spiritual war? What would you say about that?
Well, there is interplays of energy, and not all energies play nice with each other. Mm-hmm. It's just like water and fire. If you put them together, the water boils, and it can be very explosive, and it could hurt someone. And we have to understand that. That's part of understanding our world. So I think a lot of spiritual warfare is like that. Now, are there spirits out there that want the degradation of humanity and want? Yeah, there are. We all know some of them, right? We all know someone who sits there and wishes doom on everyone and actually gets a pleasure out of misfortune happening to people. And of course, I think there's probably a part of that in every human in some way. There's a part of that in each of us. But there are people who embody that in this world. Now, when they go on, it doesn't mean that when they die, that's gone. They don't just become saints all of a sudden. They become what they were here over there. Only many of us in the spiritual field believe that over there is much slower progression than over here. This is like the quickening. This is the fast path. And, this is college at a quantum level here. Where over there, things move differently. It's just a whole different idea of time. So, once they're over there, there are spirits that group together because everyone groups with people like them and that think like them. And they might have this idea of they don't want things to go right for people. But more often than not, it is less of that type of mindset and more of a thirst for recognition. One of the reasons why we do rituals with the ancestor altar isn't because we're worshiping the ancestors and wanting to communicate with them because we think they're going to make our lives better. It's because we know that not all of them are great. And the gifts they want to bring to our lives aren't good. Uncle Fester, he might be a really strange guy, and what he wants to bring is pain and misery to the world because that's what he wanted to do when he was here. And so that's who he is over there. And that's what he's going to try to bring to your life. He's going to try to live through you his desires in this world. And so really what that ancestral altar and those ceremonies are for is to remind them that they're remembered, to give them a little drink of water so that they're nourished, so they're not thirsty. The energy of not being thirsty, the energy of being recognized, all that. Then they hang out at the altar and stay out of your life. And then with that also, we start to elevate them. We start to be able to elevate them. The ones that aren't elevated already, we can, through working with them, we can start to elevate their spiritual quality. Just like I was talking about with the spirits and how they elevate us. We can elevate our ancestors by doing our services to them. So, it's all relationship. Endocrinology, it's where synchronicity and mystical experiences start to merge. Then the ego, the endocrine system, starts to align with that. And then you start to have happy chemicals released into your body when good things are coming or when you should listen to a message. And you start having distrusting chemicals that are naturally released by your body when someone's lying to you. Because your neurology, your central nervous system, and your DNA has now aligned with the spiritual fabric of the world, and it's starting to decode that. So it's really and that's when it's an embodied experience. And that's when our spirituality becomes synchronicity. It really becomes synchronicity because our body just gets into the right places at the right time. That doesn't mean it always feels good. The idea that spirituality and walking a spiritual path makes everything roses and makes everything is such a lie. Mm-hmm. It's a marketing lie.
Yeah, it's like it's romanticized. I think it's made to look a certain way, right? Marketing. I tell everybody I work with the first time I work with them, like, okay, your expansion, I need you to understand that this is going to be challenging at some points, but you want that. I try to get people to understand that challenge. The best thing we can do is move into acceptance, is accepting, just like this aligns a lot what you were saying before. Like I don't see any mistake. For me, in the way I'm designed, the way that I'm programmed now, I can't find mistakes. I don't find anything wrong. Now, I find things that don't feel good or work well in the present moment. But as you were saying, I know that it has another purpose. I might not know right now, but I'm okay because I have faith. I know that God, the creator of the universe, makes no junk. Like you just said, I know it doesn't make mistakes. So I know it's hard to cultivate that kind of mindset for most people, but it begins first, that possibility is injecting the possibility. Like, is it possible that nothing's actually wrong? And then the first thing that happens is a whole bunch of resistance arises. Hell yeah, there's a lot wrong. Like, good. That's exactly what you want to pay attention to, is where the resistance is. The resistance always leads us to where we're having some sort of frequency disruption and be able to begin to move those things.
Yeah, where something's out of balance. All of those powers of the unconscious that we consider the powers of the shadow, that we project, anger, fear, greed, all of these things, they're telling us something about our internal world. They're telling us something is out of what we call Eine, or out of reciprocity. Either we with ourselves, we with our community, we with our spirits, something's out of whack. And they're just and those energies just lend gravity to it. I'm not sure if it was on this podcast or when I was talking on Hanks, but it's like depression. Some people just are naturally depressed. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just like weather in Alaska. You don't go to Alaska and think that you're going to have sunny skies all year round. You just don't do that. You don't go to Seattle and think it's never going to rain. Well, some people are Seattle and they rain a lot. They cry a lot, and that's their way of processing things. And they hold that type of vibration. And really, it's the unacceptance of society a lot of times that creates a problem, not them. Then there's people who there is a problem. It's really causing them an issue. And really, they need to find out what that issue is. But if they notice, the cure is right there. When you're depressed or when you're anxious, you get really anxious, you have a panic attack, and then it's over. What do? You crash. You get close to the earth. You might even fall on the earth. If you have depression, you might fall on the earth weeping. All of these things is telling you where you need to go, to her, to the earth. And when we go to her and we allow our bodies to do that ritual, to fall down on the earth, to fall down to our knees, to place our navel right on the earth, and we just release and we accept, we suddenly start to realign. All of our axonal grids get realigned naturally, and we start to feel better. It's magic.
Totally. Yeah. And it's grounding your neural system. I love to ground. That's something that came very natural to me before I started to even investigate. We have lots of beautiful science now, even showing how just putting your bare feet in the grass, it only takes about 9 seconds before it begins to shift your pH. And pH, it stands for potential hydrogen. It's changing the placement of the hydrogen atom on the outer layers of the cell. And what does that do? That changes everything, changes your flow of fluid first. Like we're talking at just more of like a biological level, it changes the flow of fluid in the body right away. And then if you're talking more of an energetic level, it begins to flow energy, flow light through the being but with at least less resistance. Oh, he's stuck again. Okay, he'll be back in a minute. Let me get through some of the comments here. I would notice the time it happened today. Right. Noticing the shift in time. Time seems to be going by at super. Let's remove him so we don't got to look at him stuck in space. Poor Zane. I have noticed the time. Brandon said, I noticed the time it happened today. And Tom says, time seems to be going by at hyper speed this year. Well, this year just started, man. But I get what you're saying. In the last 365 days. I'm just being silly. Yeah, I mean, and that's going to probably speed up. I mean, for me, it's been consistently speeding up. And I know if it's speeding up for me, it's speeding up for lots of other people because I'm not separate from anyone. My circadian rhythm is way off. Has been since I lived in Europe from 70 to 82. I'm a night owl and stuck in energetics. Well, we can get you unstuck. Feel free to check out my page or Zane's page and ask questions. We do all kinds of different types of healings and things for people. Let's see. Faith says, seems like every element of life is changing and make it hard to have the same habits as far as practice. Well, good. Let your practice evolve. Okay. I'm reminding myself it's okay just to sit there with my Misha. It totally is. Because when you sit there with your Misha, maybe it will guide you to the next practice you have to go to. Something I always like to bring forward is allowing like your practice to kind of evolve. Like I'm big about letting practices evolve. Like don't just get stuck in your practice and this is how it is. You're evolving. So if you're evolving, your practice can evolve too. I even try to let people, this has been something that comes to me often when I work with people and they have had a long experience with their spiritual guidance, with their spirit guides. And what starts to show up is that they're reluctant to allow their spiritual guidance to evolve. It's almost like there's a ego fear that's happening because of that recognition of what they think the spirit is, that they won't allow it to grow. They're not allowing it to change or grow. And as soon as they get that blockage out of the way, what happens is often not only did their spiritual guidance change, like the whole understanding of how it was working begins to change. And then they have a complete kind of epiphany and a new version of them begins to arise. Mm-hmm. Hi, Zane. Welcome back. What we were talking about before the last time you froze the internet. I was talking about when you were talking about like connecting, creating spiritual relationships. Yeah. And, what I've noticed is for a lot of people, including myself, I've seen people start to create very deep connections now at a faster pace. Like everything's starting to move kind of faster. Like it's not taking quite as long, but everybody's different. It has to do with the connection in the field or connection to the spirit before it has anything to do with anything else. It's very kind of electromechanical kind of feeling. But I feel like as what's happening is our collective consciousness is rising, the ability for us to connect into higher wisdom, is starting to improve. Like it aligns a lot with my understanding early where it was showing me like we're creating like this energetic groove. We're creating like those of us that are kind of early to the party are creating like an energetic highway for others. Not everyone's going to have to unpack all of their trauma like perhaps we have or many others have earlier on the journey. We've made it so it's a potential that some people are going to be able to just to transmute and transform the energy without really having to do anything.
Yeah, it's amazing when I look at people in their 20s now, especially the mid 20s. Don't know too many people in the early 20s, but the mid 20s, there's a different way they go about life. There's just a bit of a different thing than my generation went about life with. They have the same challenges and everything, but they approach it differently. Now, we might say, well, where did they get that from? Well, they got it from us. They were seeing us do our work. We think, oh, wait, but they don't seem like they're having as hard of a time with it. No, because we already had the hard time. We already discovered the quicker way to get there. We have passed down that wisdom, that accumulated wisdom. And that only happens in a few species on Earth: humans, dolphins, whales. Really, those are the three major species that take care of the elderly past reproduction age. We weren't created by the intellect of the universe to have long lives. We were created to have fruitful lives. Now we're at the point where we've learned to hack the system. And in the ancient world, it was called spirituality. In the modern world, it's called technology. But we're learning how to hack the system and get into the genes, how to turn on gene expression and turn it off with the way that we think, with the way that we act, the way we behave. That's all rituals too. That's rituals with our own neurology, with ourselves. Everything that we experience is a CNS, central nervous system, DNA interaction. Everything that we experience as biological creatures has that element to it. Mm-hmm. As we open our heart, it becomes a beacon or a broadcaster. It broadcasts out, but it's also an antenna that receives information in. The heart's what does it. The brain doesn't do it. The brain is the hardware that runs the programs the heart creates. It's not what creates the programs. It's just hardware. This is really our bigger brain. And when we learn to make it our primary brain, then very quickly, there's over 40,000 neurons in the heart called sensory neurites. And very quickly, when the heart gets into a cohesive heart rate variability, which is basically it starts to move us down. It starts to settle down our emotions, settle down our bodies. And as that field gets bigger and bigger, what it does is it turns the brain from beta to alpha. That's the frequency the brain needs to be in to interpret the information coming from the heart. Now, in beta, the brain is in charge because it's the body and it's saying, what do I need to do to survive this danger? So our focus becomes very, very sharp. Our energy gets high. We get adrenaline rushes. We get cortisol rushes.
Sympathetic dominance.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but as this opens up and we fall down in, because it's really like falling down. And when we learn to fall down, then this starts to reorganize this in the way that it operates. And then something really interesting happens. Then we start to tap into true gratitude. Now, I may have told the story about my dad every morning having gratitude to be alive because he was terminal from birth. And just him having ecstatic, shaking gratitude and crying and everything. And that's one form of gratitude. And that's a very wet form of gratitude. But what I learned, and maybe I didn't learn it from them, but what I resonated with the Andeans is they have a very dry gratitude. They have a very dry love. And a wet love feels like love happens to it. A dry love feels like, oh, love's a power that I control. I choose to love. Not love doesn't choose me. I choose love. And that's the difference. And, you know, as we start to do that, we can find our unique love. What is it like? Is it the wet type? It's just like weather. Some people's is really wet. Nothing wrong with that. I like a lot of reverb sometimes in my music. You know? Yeah. Sometimes wet's good and sometimes dry is good. But when you find your mixture of love and you learn how to dial it in, that's true gratitude. And then something unique happens. When that starts broadcasting from the heart, you've fallen out of the brain into the heart, then you find your love and you start broadcasting your gratitude outward. Now, all of a sudden, the body comes into coherence with the heart. Not just the brain, the body too. And it starts to communicate with both. Then we become a holistic embodied spirit. We start to embody our spirituality. We start to embody our authenticity. And we start to live in that way. And it's really easy because we can find moments in our life when we're all of a sudden out of whack. And if we could catch those in the moment when we're running after a thought, and the thought become more real than reality, or we're running after a person and that person's attention is more real than reality. If we catch it, we suddenly realize we're way out here. Then all we have to really do is command our presence back here. And when we command our presence back here, oh, that stuff's not so important anymore. Oh, yeah, I want their attention, but I don't need their attention. I just want their attention. And I'll get the amount of attention they want to give to me. And suddenly the whole thing starts to flow more easily. We release less cortisol. We get out of fight or flight. We start to receive messages directly from the higher genius. Sometimes in like a telegraph form, like words, but more often than not, it's like a knowing. You just start knowing things. And you just start, and when you start to pay attention to your knowing, and it doesn't mean everything turns out perfect when you pay attention to your knowing. Sometimes you pay attention to your knowing, and you're like, whoa, I would never have wanted things to turn out that way. But you can find the gold in that. You can find why it happened. And then you can learn from it and you can grow. And you realize it was the perfect way for that to turn out.
Yeah, I mean, these are all kind of ways that, you know, that we move into neurological coherence, putting all of our, we have more than just the heart brain too. You have the gut brain. I mean, they're finding out more and more about that hunk of meat that they had no idea what it was, the mesentery, and more about how it has a lot to do with our emotional mind and the communication of the cellular structures of our body, bringing it all together like this big antenna. And, you know, like how you were explaining, it's kind of taking yourself and that's what the ritual and the ceremony can do, is start to shift you out of that sympathetic dominant neurology where you're in a fight or flight mode, a fawn and freeze mode, in your anxiety and your depression, where those things are. You can kind of step out of there, at least for a few minutes, and that's how it begins. I tell most people when it comes to ceremony, when it comes to ritual, is the hardest part for most people is getting started, like getting yourself started. Because I don't try to tell, because I think it's a Western thing too. I was a personal trainer for over 25 years, and it was very common for people to come and think like, the working out was like a means to an end. And so I try to tell them like, well, I want you to see this more as a lifestyle, and then try to bring their awareness to, are you here because you love your body or because you hate your body? You want to pay attention to that. Like, which one are you here for?
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
very good. Yeah.
that's going to have everything to do with how your success works in this place. So it's kind of the same thing. I kind of explain, our spiritual growth kind of works the same way. Another thing I tell people is like, you don't have to be a shaman. You don't have to do these things to have spiritual growth. This is just the path that we have. All right.
Yeah.
This is the path that we have. But I do say that ceremony and ritual, and those words scare some people because they don't really understand. They assess some sort, they assert some other type of meaning to it, are very powerful for you just to, it's another way to say it's meditation. That's how I see prayer. Prayer is meditation. How is my connection when I'm changing my breath speed? I'm moving into my neurology because I've practiced so much. I know exactly how to switch it so I can move my brainwave rate and start to connect into my spiritual space. What's happening there? I've altered my brainwave rate. That's exactly what meditation is meant to do. That's what it's meant to teach me, is how to access different kinds of brainwaves rates, or, in a shamanic sense, is altered state of consciousness.
Absolutely, yeah. And really, we're learning more and more about the brainwave states and how they relate to these things. Shamans aren't always in a deep altered state. There
Right.
are times that they are. There are times that they work in trance, which in trance they usually don't remember, or will only remember bits and pieces, or remember it like they were a fly on the wall, because they're not the ones in charge at that moment. And that's not right for everyone, and not everyone has that potential to release control and let something else come in and take control. And that's scary for some people. And for the people it's scary for, well, it's supposed to be, because that's not right for them, or it's not right for them right now, because not everyone has that potential. In the ancient world, that was the sign of the shaman, was that they could be possessed by ancestor spirits, by animal spirits, by something else that could bring through a different message. And they would usually not remember much of it. But we don't have to go there, and everyone can't. There are other states of mind. Everyone can't go into deep theta and operate. Some people go from alpha and they drop right into delta. And theta is just this little narrow band. And that's where the trance state is in theta, really. But we've actually found that alpha, why is it named alpha? Because it was the first brainwave we were able to discover. When the equipment that we first had that discovered brainwaves, it couldn't find beta, where most people are most of the time, and it couldn't find theta or delta, or even gamma, which is even further out the spectrum. It couldn't find any of those. It was only sensitive enough to find alpha. Now, when we look at that, there's something interesting that goes on with that. Alpha, that 10 millisecond beat, that 10 beats per second, is exactly what the Earth's frequency is. When we start to notice that it runs in an alpha frequency, our widest bandwidth, with the bandwidth that has the most amplitude of the human, is alpha. That means that we can probably produce most of our spiritual gifts and live our best life if we can foster that brainwave. If we can learn to step out of beta, we have to go up into beta. It's important. It's not junk. When you're ready to do something, beta does it. Beta is the one that actually materially does it. You're driving down the road, you go into alpha. At least I do. I don't even know. I go into theta even while I'm driving down the road. I have no idea what I pass, and I have no idea. Then a car almost hits me, and I come right back, and I'm in beta. A car almost hits me. I correct that. I get back on the road. Then about 5-10 seconds later, I get the rush of adrenaline and cortisol, and I can feel it. It feels like that moment after being electrocuted. You're like, and then I can just relax again. I can just bring myself back down and tell myself, well, that's over. I can let my body do what it needs to do, because it's just like doing a drug. You know, you take cocaine. Well, no matter how spiritual you are, that cocaine has a cycle, and it's going to hit you and do that cycle. And adrenaline's the same thing. It's going to hit you. It's going to do a cycle. No matter, you can bring yourself back into alpha, but it still has to work out of your system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to take that a few minutes to work out of your system. So, but when you bring yourself back down, you center yourself, and then I find myself right back out in theta again, not knowing I'm driving down the road. I have council meetings.
Yeah.
I don't try to do this, but I have council meetings while I'm driving down the road. The spirits come, they sit around. I don't even notice what's in front of me. I'm talking to this one, talking to that one. Oh, here's a stoplight. I'm back for a second. Oh, yeah, meeting's not adjourned yet. You know, we come back together. I don't know. Maybe they went to the bathroom or something, whatever they need to do over there. And then we're back, you know, picking up right where we left off.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I can totally resonate with that. I used to be a totally different kind of driver. Earlier, I was kind of like an aggressive driver. Now I find myself, like you're saying, I can go different places and then just become aware of when I need to that I'm even driving. Or then there's other times where it's very meditative for me. I become aware of all of the things that most people don't notice. I like to feel the road underneath the car. I like to feel, I can feel its texture and its temperature, and I can feel the energy of the car, the aliveness of the car. I can feel, that's one of my favorite things about like my journey and where I'm at on it, is I can feel everything is spirit to me. Everything is alive. Like I like to just, even something as simple as I have a glass jar in my hand, like, wow, it's alive. I like to feel that. Like to even, I like to take, you were talking about diet earlier, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit at the end here. But that's something that is really big for me and a lot of my students and people I work with, is I try to teach them to use their intentions. That's another ceremony and ritual, is to structure the water molecules in your food, giving love, grace, beauty, hum to it. I like to sing even to my water sometimes, give it a tone. And I don't know what that tone is. I use it in my intuition. I ask my body, I ask spirit, what is it? What kind of tone should I put into this water? And I allow it to come through me freely. It's almost, sometimes light language comes out. It could all vary, but like that's something I really enjoy doing, is, you know, it's like blessing your food. But for me, it's an even deeper thing, because I know I'm shifting its structure, and I'm even aware of it. I can feel like, oh, this water is not the same as it was before. And then when I drink it, then using your visualization mind to watch it come into your body, feed all of your cells. Everybody's happy and joyous.
Yeah, but we're water beings. And if you tune into Emoto's work, and his work isn't even the first work. Back in the 60s, people were playing around with the water molecule and playing around with sending different energies to it and stuff. But Emoto found, like, by freezing the water, seeing the crystalline form change. And that was really interesting. And we're pretty much water beings.
Yep.
So when we're doing something like that, you know, when you're charging that water, or when you're praying to your food and charging the water molecules in it, they are transforming. Now, this is just shamanism 101. Your body is the lake water that you drank yesterday. It's the elk you ate it 3 months ago. It's made of those things. Those are the building blocks that our brain actually, our gut breaks them down, but our brains take them and turn them into peptides and brand new protein strands that rebuild our body, either better or worse. We all age, but we can age differently. We can actually.
He dropped out again. Age. We were talking about age. That takes us back into epigenetics, where that's if nobody's ever looked into Dr. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton, I really recommend that. He's got some great research, and he's been doing it for a long time, showing that we grew up kind of in a time, and it's still kind of common teaching, is that we're like victims to our genetics. Well, what the truth is, shamans always known, and now what science is beginning to prove, is your gene expression is regulated by your environment. So not so much your external environment, that's some, but it's more the internal environment. How are you thinking? How is your vibration? Is what that comes down to. And as Zane was saying, we're mostly water, and this is precisely how our DNA communicates through biophotons, is through the water. And water actually hits a fourth stage. We know that there's liquid and there's gas and there's ice, there's a solid, but there's also a fourth stage that is kind of more like, they call it crystalline water. So it's kind of more like a gel. And our DNA actually has the ability to convert water molecules into the substance. And this is actually from this crystalline level of water is how our DNA communicates. So this leads us, everything kind of always comes back to, what am I always teaching people is always about your practice. Like, showing up to do your rituals and your ceremonies. Hi, Zane. Welcome back again.
Hi.
You're here again. I was talking because just as you were going there, Bruce Lipton showed up, and I was telling people, like, if you never checked out his work, check it out. Epigenetics is a really amazing thing to help us bring understanding into how our internal environment has everything to do with our gene expression. Like, he's pretty much, and medical books haven't caught up to this yet. Just like even brother Wim Hof. Wim Hof and his research has proven that we have control, vast control, top-down control over the autonomic nervous system. Yet that's still not what's being taught to medical practitioners currently.
Well, the reason I think that is, I think there is a reason for it. It's not, there is a science that looks at it and can study it, but it's not absolutely, there's just not absolute parameters in the objective world. Some people following Wim Hof's methods can achieve what he's achieved. Some people can't. Some people can achieve it another way. And I think that's it. Science right now is so stuck in a paradigm where if it's not absolutely that way for everyone every time, it doesn't want to even research it. It doesn't want to put any energy.
Well, the numbers are vast. I mean, so his numbers for the amount of people, just changing your breathing rate, like not even doing the other things, not doing the meditation or the cold exposure, which are two very important parts of the pillars of his training, but just the research now showing the vastness. Well, I mean, this is kind of easy to understand. We all have to breathe. If you're not breathing, you're not alive. And how you breathe has everything to do with how you're attenuating frequency through the nervous system. And this is something that's been proven over and over and over. So I agree to that to some degree, but with that, so I feel like there's still more room and research to do more about cold immersion and its effects on depression and neurochemistry. It's got vast promise, but I think there's more that needs to happen because there are inherent dangers, especially here where what's the biggest killer here in the United States? Cardiovascular disease. So that's a big issue with cold immersion. If you have some very bad cardiovascular diseases, that's not going to be for you. That's not going to be the thing.
Yeah.
But even in his research, they've been able to, it was amazing to watch the research, that happened. Some of it's happened over a decade ago. The research that's happened with Radboud University, where he went in and was injected with an endotoxin. He was injected with E. coli bacteria. It was dead, but when you're injected with it, you're going to have the flu for about 12 to 24 hours. Almost everybody does. Did you freeze? Yep, he's frozen. Okay, Zane's frozen in time again. Let's see what Dave's saying. Have you seen the studies about what microwave does to water molecules? It's wild. Yeah, I mean, I've been studying waves and energy for quite some time now, probably since about 2011, when I started to have a spiritual connection with Nikola Tesla. So this is precisely something that, as we're evolving away from Homo sapien into Homo luminous, this will be something that we'll have control over, but not everyone will. So there's going to be some people that the microwaves are going to scramble the water molecules. And what this does is create psychological dismay and distress. So they're already using things like that, Dave. They're using different sorts of weaponry that are using for crowd dispersal, where it's like a big speaker and it's actually sending out microwaves, and they're using microwaves to disperse crowds, just like what you're saying here about the studies of microwaves and what it does to water molecules. Absolutely. And this is also part of, I'm aware of the evolution of us. The evolution of our being is we'll become more and more resistant to external frequencies because we'll be able to control our own. We'll become sovereign from external kinds of disruption. This will, however, not be for everyone. There's going to be lots of people who are going to be deeply distressed by microwave technologies, and that's why we're here. We're here to grow and try to begin to create that change, so that way it can get past it. Hi, Zane. You're here again.
Hi. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was really liking where you were going with all that, and though I missed it, I think we're on the same page with it. I think there's things that we're just not we don't have sensitive enough instruments to study yet, and we
Hmm.
don't have the large enough pool of people yet to study completely. That's
Hmm.
why, and then there is just the scientific establishment.
Hmm.
Wim Hof, Leonard Orr, Jim Leonard. These are all big breathwork people. All people who I don't know Wim Hof's work as well as the other two, but all people that I really appreciate. And
Yeah.
there's something that happened to them because of the work they do that makes them nonconformist. And I think that is part of why the scientific community rejects it.
Uh-huh.
It's
Because
because of
once you start
messing.
breathing and sending blood, lymph, and cerebral spinal fluid into your brain and into your third eye, you become a nonconformist. That's
Yeah,
kind of what happens. Your antenna just wide opens. And
yeah,
I've studied many different forms of breath work. It's not that I like Wim Hof's method. What most people understand is just the base method of what he teaches and what's for free. It's actually Tumo is the type of breath he uses, a circular kind of breathing is that's what he modeled it from. But deeper in his training, so I took all of his trainings because my original goal is I wanted to be a Wim Hof instructor. So I took
absolutely.
his deeper trainings, and he's actually kind of one of the first shamans I had interaction kind of with in an energetic way, because he started to teach me about how breath is energy. He started to show me how, oh man, that's a lot more. Because when I first started doing it, I had terminal lung disease and I couldn't really do it too well. And I was like, well, at least I'm going to try. I noticed that even though me trying, it made me feel better, but I had no idea what was happening. I had no idea that I was healing my nervous system. I had no idea what was happening until it happened. And then
Yeah,
when it started to happen, I became fully aware of what happened there. And oh, that's where I was. I was on the study. He has met so Wim Hof has brought more into the scientific field than any other breathwork practitioner on the planet, just in the short, because that's what his goal is. His goal is he knows that no one's going to understand until in this part of the world, until you have science, because people want to follow the science to back it up. Not everybody wants to just, because the easiest thing would be like, here, listen, just try it. If you don't like it, don't do it anymore.
yeah,
Like, just try it, see how you feel. For most people, the vast majority of people, they start to breathe, they start to use the diaphragm, their consciousness shifts, they're shifting brainwave rate. It starts to shift right away, and they're becoming aware of something, a way of being never felt before. Some other people, they start having an anxiety attack or think they're having an anxiety attack because there's different styles of breathing that have to be used for other people. There's no one style of breathing just like there's no one way of meditating. Some
yeah.
people can't meditate interoceptually, feeling the inner body. That drives them nuts. They have so much awareness of the inner body that makes it worse for them. And for some people, it's exteroception type
Yeah.
meditations that take them further and deeper.
Yeah, some people holotropic breath work is the right way to
Yeah.
go. Some people,
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever heard of it, but quantum breath work,
Yeah.
really, really interesting breath work. Uh, I too, I studied all kinds of breath work.
Mhm. Still
I'd
out.
already gone to Peru and worked down there and learned
Mhm.
some breath things with them. They don't put a lot of emphasis on the breath, unlike in Asia, but they do use the breath. They just don't teach the breath so much. They'll just
Mhm.
show you, oh, do this, and everything they do is very short, very just a few moments, and then then that's all they need to do. But who really turned me on was Leonard Orr
Mhm.
of the rebirthing
I say he's
work.
rebirthing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and he even kept that name, even though his friend Jim Leonard turned it into Vivation. He kept
Right.
the name rebirthing and kept going with it, and and then he started the philosophy of immortalist. Yeah, because he said that he learned this breath, then he met Baba Ji, and Baba Ji's been around forever, and then he started going to India and sitting with the immortals, who are not physical. They just are now and then physical and come into this reality to
Mhm.
work with you. And there's a place where they all meet every year. I think it's every year in India. And he used
Mhm.
to take people every year with him. You could go on a trip to India with him and learn directly from Babaji. And he didn't always look the same. He wasn't
Mhm.
always exactly the same looking because, things shift here.
Mhm.
And you're not the same. Your energy body shifts, your physical body shifts. And but yeah, so I really got into him. My first breath instructor, which was just a close friend of mine, was friends with Jim Leonard, who was best friends with Leonard Orr, and they kind of developed this thing together. And my friend Joe is just there for the ride, and learned it all from him basically for free, and just got to hang out with him all the time. And so he just taught me everything he knew with that, and that really changed a lot of my perspectives about things. I was already deeply into spiritual work, always did it all my life, but breath gave me a different outlet that was absolutely beautiful for me. And one of the things they say is vibing. At a point you end up vibing all the time. And once you're at that point, it doesn't matter what goes on in your life, you just continue the breath and continue living in that way. And then everything just becomes this kind of almost like a psychedelic slur of reality, and it's really cool. But breath work is amazing.
Yeah. I still didn't finish the Wim Hof thing.
I'm so sorry.
So so they injected him first. They did it with him. They injected him with E. coli, dead E. coli. They call it an endotoxin, because they wanted him to have because they studied 14,125 people. All right. So Wim Hof, up until that point, was the only person they ever injected with this endotoxin that didn't get sick, because he had the ability to control. It's not just the breathing. The breathing is one aspect that helps you learn how to control the nervous system. So he learned how to control his nervous system and be able to control the inflammatory response that was happening in the body, the immune system function that was happening. So he's able to take everything, no illness. He was able to overcome it. So they said, hey, you must be some sort of genetic outlier. You're a very special person and this and that. And he said, nope, I can train other people too. They're like, you can? So they took 10 random people and they gave him these people to train. They were supposed to have 10 days to train them. Well, something happened and he only had 4. So he had 4 days. He was able to train these people with what he needed to train them in 4 days. And there was 15 of them. And when they came in for the study, all of them were injected. And 14 of them were able to overcome the same way Wim Hof was. One of the people started to get a fever, but overcame it within 15 minutes. So all these people that he trained, just these random people. So these weren't people that were necessarily seeking, or I don't know what the parameters were to get into the study or anything like that. But these are all studies too, to help with the placebo effect, understanding that we are the placebo. You are the
yes, absolutely.
You can change.
Yeah, people sometimes misunderstand that, and they think that the placebo effect is some trick, like it's some con or something, and it's not. It's something that's amazing that we have the ability to do that, and it's the placebo is so reliable that every drug is tested against it. Every therapy is tested against a placebo effect because it's that reliable of an effect. So if we find something that's more reliable than the placebo effect, we say it's effective. If we find something that's less reliable than it, it's not effective. Why? Because we can do just the same without it. So, the placebo is really interesting. One of my colleagues, Alberto Vialdo, that was his whole lab in the late 60s, early 70s in San Francisco, was studying the placebo effect. So they were bringing in energy healers and all kinds of people way back then. And it was before he ever went to Peru, before he ever learned anything there. But he was, he got his PhD, he got a research grant, and they wanted him to study the placebo effect. So that's what he did, And what you were talking about reminds me of something, maybe not up in Cleveland, but here in a lower part of Ohio, and especially West Virginia, where I come from, there is something called serpent handling. And there's these Baptist churches, and what they do is they'll get into an ecstatic state, start speaking in tongues, and then they start bringing out rattlesnakes and copperheads, and they'll hold them. And one of the things is the snake won't bite them. The snake will be docile, even though they're being handled. Now, sometimes the snake will bite you, and you're going to get hot. You're going to get all kinds of poison effects, but your belief in the Holy Spirit will get you through it. And now the other thing they do is they make a drink of strychnine, and they drink the strychnine too while they're doing their church service. Now, almost all of them have a few really positive results from this. Now, that's when things go awry, though, oftentimes with this. Because you shouldn't be doing it to try to prove it to other people.
That's right.
It can be a proof to other people, but when you start doing it and it's so that you're proving it to yourself, then you're getting into dangerous territory, because you've already survived it 2 or 3 times. Why do you need to survive it 5 or 6 more? Why do you need to keep proving that to yourself? There is a point when there is diminishing returns physiologically. But I totally agree. And there has been scientific research done on serpent handlers and what happens when that happens. Well, there has been research since the 70s done on trance states, showing that you bleed less when you're in a trance. Someone can pierce a needle straight through their cheek while they're in a trance, pull it out without anesthesia. Back in the early 1800s, late 1700s, there was mesmer, and mesmerizing people. And that was used before surgery. Someone who was trained in mesmerism would come and do mesmeric passes with their hands in front of you and numb you, and then you're completely awake and they can cut right into you. And you won't freak out. You don't bleed as much. These things have been proven, even though, one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, called him a quack. Went over there and called him a quack because he was using his glass harmonica thing to do healings. And Benjamin Franklin was like, this is not true, and called him a quack and destroyed his whole practice, destroyed everything, even though there was all this proof of the work he had been doing, destroyed it. Now it came back as hypnotism. Came back a few generations later as hypnotism, as a deeper understanding of what was going on.
I like mesmerism better. That sounds more fun.
Well, yeah. And everyone can practice it, and it'd be cool if some of the people on here got together with some friends and did this. You need about 3 people because you need someone to observe. But it's as easy as tying a blindfold around someone's head and then you standing behind them and just with your hand, moving your hand back and forth behind them. And within a few moments, they'll start to sway with the movement of your hand. Even though they're blindfolded, you're behind them and they can't see it. They'll start to sway with just the vibration of your hand. And of course, we see this all the time in concerts. I mean, Maynard in Tool, he'll be singing and stuff, and he'll get the entire crowd just moving in complete unison with him, just back and forth. And it's the same thing Mesmer was doing back in the day. It's the same energy.
Tom Thompson, let me just hit a couple of these real quick. Jill says, when I took my Reiki master class, we changed the water with energy. I wonder if she meant charged. I'm not sure. You could totally taste the difference. It was so cool. Totally. I get it.
Yep, you can.
And then Tom says, I grew up in a Pentecostal church, much like Zane describes. You ever playing with snakes there, Tom? Remind me not to go to that church. I don't want to go to that church.
It's amazing, though, some of the things they can do. And then, like, around here where I'm at right now, there's like a Quaker congregation. And they come together and they all sit in the room quietly. And then messages start happening. And they'll just speak in tongues, or they'll speak a message to someone. Very interesting. They fall into that theta state. And then more of the Pentecostals really I think they're working themselves up into gamma.
Yeah.
I think they go down into alpha and then work up into gamma, because it's all about that ecstatic shaking and quaking. And yeah. What the Bushmen do. I know the Bushman way a little more, but the shaking medicine, you start shaking and you go off to a spiritual classroom in the sky, and your body becomes an instrument for the spirits to work through.
All right. So I guess it's important that we should mention, what do you think, what would you say? So someone that's beginning to have interest in ceremony and ritual, how would you tell a person if someone is like, Zane, I'm interested in starting to expand my spiritual awareness, and I want to know more about practice and ceremony and things like that. What would you tell? What would you say?
Well, the first thing I would say is get grounded. Get really grounded, because with magical thinking, there comes paranoia. And there comes this idea that we can become obsessive compulsive, because that's the dark side of ritual and ceremony and magical thinking, is obsessive compulsiveness. So the first thing you want to do is get really grounded. And then you want to search out someone who you trust, who your heart feels comfortable around, that knows ceremonies or rituals. And to start working that way. Don't just go to any Tom, Dick, or Harry that's doing a workshop. fill out your heart. And if it doesn't feel right to you, don't attend that one, because that's just not the place where you're going to really get into it. And I would say go to your tradition first. If you have a tradition, if you're a Christian, Protestant, go search out Protestant churches that are more ceremonial or that have different types of offerings. If you're Catholic, ritual and ceremony, that's Catholicism up and down. That's what it does, and they're masters of it. Of course, there's some other social groups like Freemasons, where ritual and ceremony is very important, but it's very important to go to a trained ceremonialist, not just any spiritual person, not just any, there's shamans out there that are terrible at ceremony. Mm-hmm. Ceremony is not their thing, so you don't need to go to them to try to get into ceremony, because that's not how they operate so well. They had to do ceremony and ritual to get to where they're at, but they don't have a real firm understanding of it. Mm-hmm. So it's really about starting wherever you're at. Start sending out the fillers. Stay away from the spell world a little bit, right at first, especially, because you need to understand the basics of ritual and ceremony before you're working with people to do spells and things like that. Those are ritual and ceremony. But if you don't have a good connection to your spirits already, who's coming to help you? What's the spirits that are surrounding you? The place you want to begin with is discovering your spiritual court, the spirits that work with you, and then learning from someone who is authorized and trained in that tradition to help you work with those spirits, to give you the real thing. If you're doing it wrong, it's just like if I have a friend who's a vegetarian and I cook a steak dinner, they're probably not going to come and show up. Not because the steak isn't good, not because of any of that, but because it's not their vibration. So you got to learn from someone who actually knows the vibration of the spirit that's working with you to help you develop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's trial and error, though.
It's always that, right?
Yeah.
That's what I tell everybody. That's my answer is, well, it's trial and error. I always say, like, first open yourself up and start to connect just with yourself on a higher level and allow that to begin to kind of guide you. Like I noticed, like for myself and many others, once you start to get into your personal ceremony and ritual where you're just with you, that's that thing that I try to teach people who aren't there yet. They're not ready to move out into bigger forms of ceremony and ritual. They're first starting to know themselves and how that feels right there. So that seems to usually guide most people, is when they get a stronger connection to their higher mind right there. Absolutely. And that vibration. And then opportunity begins to show up. That doesn't mean that you won't be a vegetarian and someone serving a steak dinner won't show up. That's when you get to use your discernment. That's when you get to decide. That's where it's important that you know yourself. So that way you can feel that vibration and you're like, yep, that's not for me. And then find what does. And that's another thing I'd like to point out. Lots of people are looking for other kinds of people. So like, there's lots of ways. So if you're not local or whatever, you can always find me or Zane online and different things. I'm online everywhere. I try to help everybody every day, everywhere. But what I try to do is get people to, in their own area, investigate. There's going to be people who are on a spiritual path. They're growing. There's going to be groups. And how do you find these people? One of the greatest tools I know about is meetup.com. And you can find people who are doing some of the things you do. Some of them, you're not going to vibrate, just like that worked for myself and Mary when we were here. When we first started looking, we were looking for others. And so when that happened, we started to use meetup.com, and it started to show us different things that were happening. We go check it out. Not for me. And that's it. And then move along. Yeah. What that did is that really helps, because if you go out there and you're in your own community and you can't find people to do the work with, this is a sure sign for you to begin to start your community, start growing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And another thing I was going to say is ritual and ceremony. If you really want to get into it, watch the beginning 4 or 5 minutes of this video again. Mm-hmm. That is an opening ritual. And that really, you can adapt it a little bit to yourself, but if you really pay attention to it and you go through it a few times and you notice what happens to you, that is priming you to receive guidance. That's priming you to connect with the spiritual world. That's bringing you down into an alpha level state so that you can receive your guidance. So that, even though it's really simple, and that's what you're going to find out, is that most of the time rituals and ceremonies have a simplicity to them, the ones that are the most powerful. The ones that are really conflated and have all this like extra stuff is I'm not going to say they're weaker, but oftentimes it's because someone needs all that other stuff to start believing. You know, the most powerful practitioners can do what a whole despacho does with one kintu. You know, and even beyond that, can sometimes do it with none. Does that mean that they will never do a despacho? No, because the despacho is something that teaches you. It's just like cooking. Every time you cook, you get better at it. Every mistake you make cooking, you learn from. You know, maybe you don't even need food anymore, but you're not going to become a better cook if you don't cook. You can't become a better ceremonialist if you don't engage in ceremony.
And there you go in your practice again. That's the primary thing. I'm really big on people. If you want to change, that is. If you don't want to change, don't practice. If you have a drive to change or you want to grow, practice, because that's everything. I always use this one. I call it your spiritual legs. When you were a toddler and you were learning how to walk, how often did you try? All the time. Well, you know, your life can be very sacred and you can be aware of your spiritual awareness. The more you use it, the more aware you become of it. I don't have times too much where I'm not aware of that. Like, it's always here. It's always with me. Now, you know, there's times we all are humans still, and we're going to have times where we forget who we are, at least for a second or two. It's going to happen. And then it's through that practice, it's through that ceremony and ritual that you're actually on different levels. So from a spiritual level, you're gaining your relationship, you know, and then from an energetic level, you're connecting lines of energy. From a neurological level, you're building neurology that's able to respond when it's time for you to need it. Then you don't need a lot of time, just like you're saying with a simple practice. As soon as you started talking about it, I could feel my shift start. You were just mentioning it. That's all you did was mention it. And my awareness started to open. I was like, I know exactly what he's going to say. He said, now you'll notice how you feel. Yep. I see exactly what that is. And I've shifted into a different rate. How is that? Doing it over and over. You do it a whole bunch of times. It becomes second nature. And then you don't have to try anymore. There'll just be times like how you were talking about earlier, the intuitive sense of your being. It just you're driving. You're not doing it. It just happens. I'm not trying to do this. It's just happening. And things start to happen in a very kind of organic manner.
Yep, absolutely. Because you've put the effort and the time into learning it. And what you're actually learning on a biological level is how to shift your neurology. You're learning how to shift like a gear into different neurological settings. And I almost see it like temperature gauge. And each temperature brings through unique information. You go to temperature 96 degrees, you're not getting the same information you get at 50. You're just not. You may be able to access little bits of it, but it's different information. You go down to 45 degrees, you're still not getting what you get at 50, but you're getting a whole different realm of information. So it's really learning how to dial in the right consciousness for the experience that's happening right now in your life. There's not just one right consciousness you dial into, you stay in forever. You know, you can go into alpha, you can learn to problem solve in alpha. That's really awesome. But when there's an emergency and you have to take immediate physical control, alpha can't do it. You got to go into beta, because that's what operates directly to the muscles. That's what tells the body to move, is that beta level. So, you know, it's all useful. And what we're really learning to do is how to gently and easily transition the wave, how to move from one wave state to another, not to play an energetic favorite. Energetic favorites end you up on the mountain meditating for the rest of your life, missing out on your life because all you really want is this experience.
That's okay. You reincarnate and do it again.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with it. It might be what you came here for. But I came here to live a life. I came here to be engaged. And my belief about spirituality is, it takes practice. It takes you away from certain aspects of your life sometimes. You got to make room for it. It's just like working out. You got to make the effort. You got to put it on the calendar. You got to say, this is the time I'm doing it every day. You know, or I do it 3 times a week and these are the days I do it. And you try to do it the same time every week. You try to do it this, similar types of exercises. You got to change it up sometimes, but you try to do it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it's a ritual, and
Mm-hmm.
the human animal is ritualistic. We need ritual to make order out of our reality.
Mm-hmm.
The analytical mind really doesn't make the order. It's the ritualistic mind that creates the order in our reality. And once we start to create that, and that's something that's relatively new, it just came with the advent of agriculture. Just about 90,000 years ago, that we actually turned on those parts of ourselves and we were able to start doing real rituals. And we started developing mandalas and things like that. Our despachos, that's a mandala. That's what it is. It serves the same type of purpose. And that's something that's relatively new, that we have had the ease in life and the advancement that we were able to start awakening those parts of ourselves and start to engage them. And I just love where we are right now. I just to give everyone a little taste of something that I think is important. I'm sick right now. I yesterday got the flu or COVID or something, and was sick as a dog last night. And I went to bed and did my work. And I turned to Patricia and I said, I'm going to feel better tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I'll feel better tomorrow. Do I feel 100%? No, that's just not the reality. And I'm okay with the fact that I might feel miserable later tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it's all part of the way this flow works.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to choose if I suffer in it. And if I choose to, hey, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or I get to choose if I liberate myself through it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. But I found there's certain things we can do that speed it up. Yes, healers get sick. Yes, we do get sick sometimes. But it's how we apply it. Really, it's how we have disciplined our mind.
Right. It's what you're calling it too. If you're calling it sick, it's sick for you. I don't do that to myself. Are you sick, Zane, or are you integrating? That's what's happening.
Well,
Are you integrating?
I'm integrating it.
What's happening? Are you actually sick? I don't believe you. And I think you feel about 74%. That's about
I would say I feel right around
pretty good right now, somewhere about 7.2, 7.3 out of 10.
Yeah. Well, that's how I used to look at illness. When I was really young, junior high, high school, I thought of illness the way you think of downloads. I thought every year you had to get sick or you had to download this virus into you to receive the new program for the next year. And that's how I viewed getting ill. I viewed it as it was a download of information that is really hard for your system to work through. But once it does, your system's stronger and it's ready for the next year. That was the concept I had back then. Now I'm okay with everything. Words are words for me now. I don't mind. I'll call it sick. I'll say, oh, I was miserable last night. And that's
the thing is, though, is when you're saying it, I know you don't believe it. So I'm watching the words come out of you. I'm watching the energy. So it's different for you. When you're saying it, you have acceptance of, yeah, I'm sick. But you don't really, that's not what your mind is saying. For the conditioned mind, it's like, I'm sick.
Yeah.
You're agreeing to it and it's kicking your ass and really destroying you and taking, now it's just this terrible, terrible thing that's happening. I know you don't actually believe that. So when you're saying that, that's why you started the other way. Now you're like, I don't need to do anything because I don't care what it is. So
with words, it's just
when we're trying to reprogram what's happening in the mind, we have to really be careful with words because words are frequency energy. Just like I don't like to use certain words with clients and things. Like lots of people, like I don't like to use the word trauma. I don't like to use it. It's been commercialized, overused, misunderstood, and people hide behind it. When I call it emotional data, this starts to change the way the mind's looking at it. Like, oh, I have unresolved emotional data. Now, like, I'm beat down with trauma and nothing can happen. But I have no problem for myself saying the word because I know what it really means.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
But when we're trying to help other people go beyond the limitations of their mindset, I think it's really important for us to be very careful how we use words because they're so powerful in our language and
words
what we're using.
Create trances. That's something else that's relatively new in humanity, is that we learn how to create a symbolic language. We don't know that if we learn language first or ritual first, but we know that they work in the same level. We know that language is a symbolic ritual. And so I totally agree with you that certain words can be used in certain ways. And I also, what is one of the things shamans do? The unexpected. because it breaks, so if I'm working with people who are really worried about that, I might use the word trauma just to create the shock value that will reverberate through them, that will trigger something in them
You
that
can see it.
needs to come up and out.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I don't worry about that on a conscious level. I let whatever current moves through me say what it wants to say, and the way it wants to say it. And then I deal with the repercussions.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like it's fun for you. I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. Well,
I'm sick and it's great. It's cool. I'm gonna feel like shit maybe later. You're not. You're
yeah.
gonna be fine. That's all
No,
gonna
I'm
be
gonna be
right?
fine. I know it. And it's just, and that's part of the whole thing. But that does not mean that there isn't a side of me that isn't like, I feel sick.
Sure. And
And
that's
I
okay.
love that side of me. And I'm not like, oh, you're wrong or anything like that. I'm like, you are, man. But it's okay because you'll be better.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a momentary thing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's something I've worked for all my life to get to
Sure.
that level.
Right. Yeah. To be like, I don't care about any of the words. Say whatever you want to. I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do agree with you. Don't think that I'm disagreeing with you. Hey, we have to be conscious of words because words create trances, and trances create realities, and every word we use can create that. But I believe a word is a vessel, and I believe the energy you fill that vessel with is
Yep.
more important than the actual word.
Right.
So I believe that if you fill a vessel like trauma, like
Mhm.
what do I say a lot of times? And I'm giving this to everyone out there: trauma drama. Why? Because it puts a comic spin on it. It still uses that word trauma, but it throws this drama like a soap opera.
Mm-hmm.
And I might start using your soap opera
Yeah,
now.
I think with a word like trauma, it's the material of the collective that fills the vessel,
Yeah.
because I have a different understanding of what the word means, but I also am aware that that's not the common understanding.
Yeah.
So like of what it is. So like you just said, it is a vessel. And so we've all assigned different sorts of meanings to words. And so like if you never heard of the word before, you're going to have a different feeling than if you've been in this society where we've been at and for the last 20 years. Trauma is what people talk about.
Yeah.
Trauma. But as
Yeah.
long as it's that, it seems like this insurmountable mountain because Jill hasn't gotten over hers and Bill hasn't gotten over his and Sally hasn't helped hers or anything like that. They're not learning how to deal with those things. So
Yeah.
for a few people that I've worked with, especially, it seems to be people have been on long-term spiritual journeys. They've been on spiritual journeys for a long period of time. And just something that seems to be happening. Time's changing now. We were just talking about that earlier, the way time works. Like there's a lot of kind of misinterpretation, and that's going to change a lot as we're moving forward into this space, is that like your physical understanding of time has nothing to do really with your spiritual development. We think it does, but it
Mhm.
really doesn't, because it has to do with the frequency and signal in which you are connected in the space, because all time is now is really
Yeah.
what's happening. So that's where that's starting to change. So I've had people come to me, like have been on long-term spiritual journeys. I was here in the 60s and 70s and this and that and blah, 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 blah. But they end up running into a wall because they haven't a lot. They thought that maybe they were past some of the things that they were meant to heal, not
Mhm.
understanding that healing typically is never real. Parts maybe, but it's rarely ever linear. It's more cyclical. It's more
Yeah.
spiral of growth, and you'll revisit things. Like I'm very open to revisit my whatever comes through, whatever shows up. I'm okay
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
whatever shows up. I won't try to deny it in any sort of way. But I've had practitioners, one in particular that always stands out to me, a particular practitioner that came to me and she was telling me about how she was feeling and everything. So I asked her, "Do you mind if I kind of take a look? You let me feel." And so I just kind of sat there with her for a few moments, just quietly. I was just softly connecting, and I became aware I ran into her inner child. It happens to me a lot with people. I don't know why, that's my thing. I kind of run into the little kids inside of people. I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" And then so the little kid starts to tell me, and I'm like, "Okay." So then I kind of come back, and then I tell the practitioner, my friend, I'm like, well, what's coming forward is there's some inner child work that needs to kind of be taken care of. And I didn't even get to finish the sentence before she's like, I already took care of that back in 1997. We lost Zane again. We'll take him down. Hopefully this will be the last one, because we're getting near the end here, an hour 54. It's amazing. I can't believe how fast time goes. Talk about time dilation, you know? But what I was talking about is really what we need to do is be careful that we don't get our mind caught on these illusions of time, thinking that the time you've spent in your human life has anything to do with your spiritual development. It really doesn't. It really, really doesn't. And if you do that, you're going to shortchange yourself. I see people doing this over and over. It happens a lot. It happens really a lot. And what that does is that creates a form of suffering. Is what it's an attachment to an illusion is usually what begins to rise. What really matters is what you're connecting to in the spiritual space, because amazing things, vast spiritual growth can happen in an instant in the spiritual space. And, you know, I always kind of explain it as like, you can advance, you can mature 100 years in emotional maturity in 10 minutes. If you connect to the right frequency, if you're connected to the right frequency of consciousness and teaching that's available to us, it can come right through and begin to shift you in a really, really big way. Zane's back.
Back again. Yeah.
Zane's back.
So
I don't. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know how you ended all that, but I'm sure it was amazing.
Honestly, I don't remember either right now, but
that's the stuff, man.
It just kind of, you just froze and I just keep going. You know, it's fine. It's no big deal. It's really good.
One thing I was going to say though is we become really sensitive, especially during our ceremonies and rituals. We become really sensitive, and it's part of being in the heart. It's part of being in that alpha level. We become sensitive to the people around us, and then we learn to dial into their degree of consciousness. Sometimes we want to be right at their degree of consciousness to help them. Sometimes we want to be a degree or two higher and to work from there down. But when we learn to tune into that degree, we can start to take it, we can start to develop a faith that will say the right thing. And even when that right thing causes a big reaction that we may not enjoy, we definitely touch something there. Now, we're not trying to be overt assholes or anything like that, but you know, when we learn to dial into the frequency degree, and part of that is getting our ego to play a back seat. It has to play part, but to let the higher mind take over. Then we become the medicine the person needs. But we can be a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, so anyways, that's what I was saying before about, so the practitioner with the inner child work didn't even let me finish the sentence. Like, no, I did that already. That's already taken care of and all that stuff. I'm like, so I just kind of backed off, and you know, like we're talking, the trigger arose, you know. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not afraid to trigger other people. I'm not afraid to, because I have faith. I have faith in my medicine gift. And I totally understand that. That's kind of the being I am. I'm going to just kind of person and kind of thing that kind of brings forward harsh truth. I do it to myself. I'm not afraid. You know, I have no fear. So I bring it out. I also know that, you know, healing really is triggering. I'm going to trigger a form of healing. It doesn't mean I'm going to trigger you and piss you off. It can also mean, which happens more often than not, is that I trigger you to want to go further, to open yourself up, to see something you couldn't see before. For me, the deepest form of healing is if I can help you think one new thought. If I can help you to see one new thing, that's the greatest thing that can ever happen, because your whole world changed. And if that happens, it means my world's changed and the whole world has changed. Well, the practitioner, when I told her, please, all I want you to do is I want you to just allow the resistance to show you what you're not letting go of. Okay, she could handle that. And then so it was the very next day I got a phone call and she says, Anthony, you're right on the money. It's exactly what it is. And I sat with it today, and through my resistance, I could see how I was lying to myself and betraying myself. And I went into it and I met my child, and I was able to rectify what it was and take it apart. It was a wonderful thing. And I was like, great. See, so it's like, that's one of those cases that happens to me often. There's lots of people, you know, I'm sure it's happened to you. You just mentioned it. You'll trigger someone, right? You're going to trigger someone. You're not, my intention is never to hurt anyone. I'm not here to harm anyone. I want to love everybody. The old versions of me, not so much. Now my primary goal and drive is to be loving to people around me. Sometimes that includes me saying something that you're not willing or anyone else is willing around you to tell you.
Yeah.
for you to say. And the thing is it's not that I'm right. That's the other thing. Like, so like, what makes you think you're right? Well, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just telling you something, and you can look at it or not look at it. It's up to you. Like, I'm not saying I'm right and I know all the answers, because I don't. All I know is what comes through. And I believe that everything that comes through all of us, and even your trigger towards me, is something I'm learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the trigger is for you and not even for them. You know, sometimes they're rightfully to get triggered and yell back at you because it shows you something about yourself instead of about them. But that's what being a human is all about. We're no one's perfect. No one's, or we're all perfect maybe, but we trigger each other. We bounce off of each other. We learn from each other. We grow from each other. And that's really a beautiful experience, you know, to have this individual experience of life. And I know that you've been in some of my circles before. Well, I know you've been in many of them, but you notice that it's not even the words that are said, but people will have breakdowns in the ceremonial space, you know, and other people will have a reaction. Oh, I got to help them. And you'll probably remember that I usually say, no, don't do that. Let them sit with that. That's what they came here for. Don't cheapen this for them. And all of you that are feeling uncomfortable because they're having a breakdown, get over yourself. You're here to grow. Experience that and look at the beauty of that breakdown. Right. Allow that person to break down, because they don't have anywhere else in their life that they can break down. And now look at what we've done. We've created a sacred enough space that they feel safe enough to allow that to come up and out. So allow them to allow that to come up and out. Allow that whatever needs to happen for them to purge that, because they've been holding on to that for too long, and we're creating a safe space for them to purge it in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like in my circles and things I do, I usually encourage people, like, whatever comes up, let it go. If you want to laugh, laugh, cry, cry, whatever comes up, and it's okay. Everything's okay. Sometimes just saying that is enough to unleash someone. Someone may just start crying right there because no one in their life tells them that it's okay for you to cry here. This is a safe place for you to let go and be yourself and allow yourself to feel whatever it is you're not allowing yourself to feel in your daily life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Come on in.
Got to have a cup or a drink of coffee.
Good. I recommend it. Well, we're at 2 hours, 2 minutes. We probably should start leaning into the wrap.
Yeah, we should probably wrap it up, even though I'm having so much fun. I could go all night.
Time goes by so quick in here. There's that thing again, that time dilation. That's something I think one of the times you popped out is asking other people about if they're experiencing time dilation, experiencing differences in time. Most people I know that are even semi-tuned are starting to come in. Like the temperature knob, same thing for me. It's like radio frequencies. Like shift to this frequency, shift to this channel, that channel, this channel.
And I'm sure that cold exposure or working with cold water the way you do, I'm sure it shifts you into a different frequency itself. Because one thing, it slows down the body.
Yeah.
You know, and I know the Dumo technique. And that's to excite the fire inside of you, you know, and there's some other names for it too, but it's very powerful, very beautiful.
Yeah. Inner fire. That's actually the name of Wim Hof's son's company, who owns Wim Hof.
That's awesome.
The cold
we have to get together and talk more about that. It's just a part of breath work that I know so little about, honestly. Yeah.
I'm constantly working at it because I understand what a powerful healing modality it is. And it's so much more than just breathing. And now there's more, the longer I do it, the longer I stay in the path, the deeper understanding I have for the spirit, like myself and the spirit of breath, because breath is a spirit to me. It's this living spirit. When I'm breathing in with that intention, I'm bringing the spirit of breath to me. I'm bringing this energetic being to my space is what's happening. And then that's my relationship. That was one of my first spiritual relationships, was to my breath, like a true relationship. But the cold, the way I react to the cold is very something. I've really, really trained myself in certain ways. And when I get in there, so what I like to do when I do like events with other people, I turn my ice bath into a shaman's ice bath. So what I do is we take a bunch of heads of flowers, and then I have everybody do a prayer,
cool.
Setting the flower into the tub. And then so what we're doing is we're blessing the tub. Water has vast memory. While you were off, I was talking about some more recent research. I was learning about a fourth state of water, which is more like crystalline. And this is actually how our DNA communicates through biophotons. All this stuff is affected by making our body cold as well. So when I have everybody bless the flowers and they get in there, and then each person, as they come in, I kind of get the tub ready. It's very intuitive how it feels getting it ready. And they get in. And as they get ready, the first thing I need to do is get them to calm down. And that comes through control of the breath. And I use a cadence that smell the flower, cool the soup. Smell the flower, cool off the soup. Extending the exhale, allowing yourself to fall into a slower cadence, a slower speed. And that takes about 20 to 30 seconds. Then after that, I start to guide them. I'm softly talking to them, and I start to guide them in. I want you to let go. I want you to let Mother Water to have whatever it is you no longer need. She's the greatest cleaner in the universe, can help you become free of the things you no longer want. And so as they're working through that, they're calming down their breath. I'm praying. I can start to feel all their energy start to move into the water. Water gobbles it all up and loves it. And then after they give away, I say, okay, now I want you to reverse the flow. Imagine you could open all your pores. All your pores are little thirsty mouths, and you're going to begin to drink in as much light, soothing light as you can imagine, and bring into your body. And then you'll watch the shift happen. Their color changes, and everything starts to rise. And by the time they get out of the tub, now that's when the biochemistry is moving. The norepinephrine's up 530%. The dopamine's up 250%. Plus a lot of other things are happening, and they're feeling really good and had that big thing. So after I go through the whole group, what I like to do is I like to go in there last, because the first thing I do is I go in there and I drink all the hoocha. So I eat up all the hoocha because the water has great memory. It's memorized everyone's hoocha. I'm also picking up everyone's medicine. That's the other thing that's happening. That's something about what kind of being I am. I pick up medicine and frequency. So I can sit in there. And even if there's people that aren't, like medicine people, every human being has medicine in them. And I can pick that up through their hoocha. I keep what I need. I give Pachamama hers. I give the upper world theirs. And then I move along. Then I do my ritual in there. Then I'm doing my ritual. I'm allowing myself to purge anything that I need, and then drinking in anything else I want to. And so I have a very wild kind of relationship with cold water. If I get in the cold shower, as soon as I do this really kind of psychotically as well. I don't wait. I don't I turn on the water, the faucet water. I take in 3 breaths. I take in the third breath, a big inhale, and I pull a little stopper, and the water just slams me and gets started. And I slowly exhale. And then, that first 20 seconds is murderous in a way. And then you start to flow. As I start to flow, I turn around, and then what I do is I let the water hit the upper trapezius, because it's hitting the upper trapezius. This is activating the massive brown fat that is there. And it's that brown adipose tissue. It starts to release certain hormones, and then your liver I can feel my liver start to release cold shock proteins. And as that starts to happen, now I can feel my neurochemistry start to change. And then usually I'm out of body really fast. Then it's like what you were talking about when we're driving. I'm aware I'm in the cold shower. I'm not going to fall over. I'm not going to hurt myself, but I'm not there. That's not where I'm at. And usually that's, for me, every day, my cold shower, even if it's 10 minutes, that's usually my deepest form of prayer and connection to the higher self and source. And that's another thing, is my strong connection to water. Like, I'm very strongly connected from doing these things with the water. It connects to me. I love going over to Lake Erie. She's also my pacarina. So going over to her, I have this beautiful connection. And when I open up sacred space there, I don't even have to get in the water to usually be able to pick up everything and feel everything I need. And then going off into that water, that natural moving water, the other participants that come in, I can feel them and connect to them. And it's just this kind of really amazing thing. She usually takes me into almost like prehistoric times. Like, she'll sitting in there, the visions I have are prehistoric. Like, I'm seeing the same area, but it's like just after the ice age. So it looks completely different, but the same. And that's usually where she likes to take me. She takes me into these distant pasts. I don't question a lot about it, because it's usually more than my intellectual mind understands. It might make more sense later, but I take in a lot of frequency and information, and I just kind of let it grow and expand. Absolutely. But I definitely have a really awesome time cold water for me is, it's the second most important thing in my practice, I would say, because both of those, it's not just breathing and it's not just cold water. These are very much spiritual practices for me in a big way.
Absolutely. And I love hearing you talk about it. I can feel the light and
Yeah.
and the spiritual quality that brings to you. And I wanted to just mention this to everyone out there. See, he's done a ritual, and he's done it over and over again. That's this cold water ritual. And now his ego trusts his I in those moments. And it knows it's not going to die, and and it can release the I, and it can do it in a way where it's cooperating with I. And when they come together like that, you can go into such deep places of reverie. And that's what ritual is supposed to do. It's supposed to bring the I and the me together so that they can join together and do something on purpose to trigger something in life, to trigger something. Sometimes it's an ending of something or a beginning of something or just changing something. Sometimes it's not so much ending or beginning, but transforming something from one state to another. And these are beautiful things. And this is what ritual, what he just said is probably the most succinct and poetic way to explain what ritual does.
Mm-hmm. Not saying you have to cold water. No, like, don't get confused. I'm not saying you have to get in cold water to have this kind of experience. You don't. There, like Zane said in the beginning, what's calling to you?
Yeah.
What feels like it's calling to you? Like, I also like one of my strongest connections spiritually is to the sun. I have a very strong, it didn't used to be that way. I had to wear sunglasses all the time because any light was giving me a headache. I couldn't stand the heat, didn't want to be out in the sun. But since I've developed this strong connection, and the sun is very much like a father to me. It's a fatherly feeling and energy, and how he communicates with me is a very beautiful thing. And now I can't get enough sun. I can't get enough. I love it so much. And it's just something amazing. But just as an example, there's so many ways that because everything is alive. If you want to start something simple, just start simple. Start talking to your water. Start having connection with the water you're about to drink. I love that. Every day I do that. I have a ritual of how I make coffee. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I make coffee in the morning. I hand grind my beans in a pestle because I like to have this close up kind of connection with what I'm making and what I'm doing. And they're Peruvian beans, of course. So I mash them all up and I make my coffee. And it's like, I pray to my coffee. I love the coffee. I drink it. I mean, but that's how I've trained myself to be. I love to treat my life as a ceremony. I like to treat my everything, even when the bullshit happens. It happens. Right. And it's okay if I can treat it lovingly, if I can treat that as also part of my being, it's no problem. It's no longer a problem. It's just an opportunity now for me to grow.
And that's what, of course, there's the ceremonies where we're falling into relationship with the spirit, not like another entity spirit. But most of the rituals, what we're really doing in them is training ourselves. What are we training ourselves for? When stuff goes wrong. When things are bad, when you get a broken leg, when any of these things happen, then all of a sudden, all that you learned, how to shift your consciousness, it comes into play, and you can actually keep yourself alive. You can slow yourself down. Like we were saying, you get close to theta in the lower ranges of alpha, and your blood will actually quit flowing. It will quit flowing out of wounds. So you can actually control yourself from bleeding out. There's so many interesting things that can happen, but it's all about learning to take charge and control of yourself. And there's many ways to do it. Special forces have a whole different way of doing it because, well, they're in the business of espionage and they're in a whole different realm of reality, but they are doing similar types of ritualistic techniques to control their mind, to control their body's responses to the stimuli that's coming in so that they don't end up panicked, because that's the worst thing you can do, is get into a panic, because then you're not in control anymore. You've lost control to the memories of the body, and the memories of the body are not really important in the present moment. So the body is acting out all kinds of things that already happened to it, but they're not relevant to this moment. So, it's all about realizing that happened when it happens, and then bringing yourself back into your body. And ritual is how you learn to do that. Ceremonies and rituals teach you that. Even the weirdest and boring, there's a ceremony to Congress. Now, most of us would not really care to be part of the gavel banging and all that, but that ceremony in Congress helps to train the Congress people to keep their cool, to learn when to speak and when not to speak. And it really is training for that particular thing. Does it mean they can take that to other parts of their life? Maybe, maybe not. But they are able to do it there, and that makes them better statesmen. That makes it better. They can learn. I'm not saying they do, but they could learn to be better representatives of the people. And
I like how you were careful there. I'm not saying that.
because all the trades had it. All the trades had a unique way of looking at reality and had their own rituals and ceremonies that prepared the apprentice to become a master. And those are all spiritual. And they all taught lessons that were based in the trade that you're learning, but actually were to be applied to every aspect of your life. And that's something that we've kind of lost a little bit in our modern era. The trades aren't doing that as much. College doesn't do that as much today because it's more about becoming a repository of information that you can regurgitate than learning how to take that information. And even if you can't remember it correctly, taking the gist of it and learning how to use it in a different situation. That's how we used to be trained. Now we're trained to be more like a walking dictionary that spits the information back out perfect.
Right, which is just knowledge. Like knowledge is kind of worthless without experience because it's the knowledge plus the experience that yields wisdom. Exactly. And that's something that's been taken away, I think, from our society and from our culture is the development of wisdom. Something just came up like recently. So it's kind of something I recognized a while back because I was an atheist before, but now I like to read scripture. I like to read the Bible. And when I read it, it's just because I can feel it and I can understand what it's actually saying, not what I thought it was saying before. I actually am aware of it. And then recently I was watching something and there was a quote that came through. I'm not sure from where it was, it was like an Indian type of name. And what the guy said is scripture cannot be understood until one is enlightened. And when that enlightenment occurs, the scripture is no longer needed. So it kind of goes what I do. I just don't use that word enlightened because that sounds like I'm fully illuminated. I'm God, kind of, which you are. But like that's misunderstanding to a lot of people, where it's more of I understand like it takes a certain frequency of consciousness to be able to interpret the frequency of the scripture. And once you understand that, you don't need the scripture anymore because you understand it. And what the problem is the primary teachings, the people have been teaching the things in scripture for the last however many hundred years, the vast majority of them do not possess that level of consciousness. So that's why we passed down. And now we're in this space now where the wisdom just isn't there. The wisdom didn't happen. It wasn't passed down. And now there's a rise of people on the planet like you, me, many others who are here, and we're wisdom keepers. We're here to bring wisdom into the space to open that up.
Yeah, I think it's the modern world's addiction to truth. Now, there's nothing wrong with truth, but we believe that truth is always absolute, and that's not true. We think
that's going to trigger some people, Zane, because there's a lot of people that don't want to hear that truth is whatever you believe it is.
Yeah, facts are what we call things that can't be changed. Truth is more subjective than that.
Which there's not even facts.
There aren't really, because they're always shifting and changing. But these are all models for us to learn to operate. And as we attain and as we elevate ourselves, we elevate just like I was talking about, we have spirits out there that are part of us. We don't know that they were, but then we discover them and we suddenly realize they're part of us. And when we start working with them, they start to work on that part of ourselves that's them. And eventually that changes and we elevate. And when we elevate, we get introduced to a new personality of that same spirit, meaning that we have a chance to learn all over again. They're growing as we grow. Now, they are already at that level, but they can only touch us at the level or the degree of consciousness we can tune into. So, but what they're learning from us at our degree of consciousness is just what that's like here. then they can create a type of humility inside of themselves without being manifest. They can realize, oh, these kind of things are hurtful in that dimension. These kind of things make people feel better. And they're learning as well. So our relationship is a two-way street. It's not spirit just gifting us. We're gifting spirit back through our experience, through the misery of our lives and the great parts of our lives. What we're doing is we're training the universe how to make a better universe for us. And only we can do that. Every person has a job in that. And it doesn't matter where you fit on that spectrum. Honor what you're feeling, honor what's going on with you, and you'll be a lot further down the path. Realize that everything you feel, every circumstance you go through, none of them are minor. All of them have major repercussions in time and space, and they're all changing the very fabric of reality. So honor it that way. And if you start living from that perspective, that becomes a ritual. You know, like you were saying, every moment of your life is a ritual. When you start living from these perspectives, every moment of life becomes a ritual. Yeah. And sometimes you pay a lot of attention to the ritual, and sometimes you pay less attention to it. And that's okay. And you know when it's important to pay more attention and when it's less important to pay attention. And you also then are walking down the path to mastery.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Absolutely.
If anybody has any questions, I would like you to pop those up. Also, Zane, what are some things you got going on? I know there's a link in the description to this video. Maybe you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. Yeah. So I believe it's, I should know this for a fact, but I'm a little bad with timing. It's on the landing page that goes to, I believe it's the 25th of January. I'm starting something called the Modern Shaman's Diet. And though there is a physical diet with it, it's much more than that. It's about radically transforming your life in a very fast way. And so there's a diet, there's some ceremonial work we'll be doing, some understanding, some meditation. And then there is certain types of ritual work I'll be doing on the behalf of the people who join the program. So it's a program that goes right in, it's a living program. It happens right now. It's not something you can take 3 months from now. It's something you take right now and you move forward with it. And it helps you change your entire life in 30 days. It's actually 5 weeks, but the first week we're just preparing everything. Then we have 4 weeks where we're going deep into it. And, you know, you communicating with me to do rituals. Now, the rituals I'm doing and stuff, they're just to suspend the situation in your life. They're to help put a suspension on that situation while you accumulate the power and wisdom to change your life. So so it's a cooperative type of program. And I'm really excited about it. It's in the link. You can go and read a little bit more. I, of course, didn't put too much in the description because it's living and breathing. It has a life of its own. But if you would like to join me for that, please do. We're going to have a whole lot of fun, a whole lot of experience. I guarantee you your life will change. What you think of life will be different at the end.
I recommend the experience of Zane's living teachings. It's something I've really enjoyed, and I think it's fantastic. So it is, I'm looking at it right now. It is the 25th is the start. And I'll just read real quick what the little description is. It says the Modern Shaman's Diet is much more than just a diet. It's a whole program of radical transformation. It includes the diet, ceremonies, group coaching, and personal spiritual work I will be doing on your behalf. Together, we will work to transform your life from the inside out and outside in. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. We have lots of events. I'll talk about those more. You guys can come visit me tomorrow for ceremony and ritual tomorrow morning on Ask the Shaman. We'll be doing some breath work and things, I'm sure, in there. It's all intuitive. I never plan any of those things. So bring your questions or bring your topics of discussion. Those are fun things to do. We'll be back again with this program, the Spiritual Odyssey of Awakening Renewal, S.O.A.R. You can come S.O.A.R. with us on the 17th. And then again on the 31st. We're doing this currently bi-weekly. I don't know, what may change or something in the future. Zane and I have talked about doing some other things, some other offerings to you all. We'll see where that leads us. The year has just begun, and I'm really excited to see where it goes and what it takes. Because
Me too.
I have to say, I will say, in the few years since Zane has become my primary human teacher, it's really been quite helpful to my growth and expansion. And I want to thank you so much, Don Zano, for being here, for doing the work, for helping people like me and the others to grow our gifts, to begin to bring our unique voice into this world and facilitate deep change, because I'm highly driven and highly motivated to create a better world. Not that I hate this one. I don't hate this world. I love this world. I just know we can do more. That's
It's
what
our mission. It's really the mission of every human to leave this world a better place than when we came. To do our little piece. And it doesn't matter how minuscule it might seem, touching one person. And that's how grace works. It's like the butterfly effect. It can create a wind that becomes a hurricane somewhere. And it's about that. And thank you so much for your kind words. Your friendship has meant so much to me as well.
Nike, thank you. I'm so grateful. Let's see. Jill just wanted to tell us she loves us too. We love you too, Jelly Bean. We love you so much. So check me out tomorrow morning. I'll be on tomorrow morning. I don't have a guest for tomorrow, but you could be. I can always bring people on if you're interested in being on the show. Again, thank you so much, Zane, for being here. And
absolutely, I wouldn't be anywhere else. I love this. I love getting together.
All right. You all have a good night, and we'll be back soon. Bye-bye.